This is the conversation Australia needed to have. I sat down with Dr Mohamed Mustafa, an English-Australian emergency physician trainee of Palestinian heritage. He is a doctor who went into Gaza, witnessed the human cost of war, and returned with a story that many Australians need to hear. On paper, people would expect us to be on opposite sides. I am a Christian. He is a Muslim. I come from a very different political world, but that is exactly why this conversation matters. Because beneath the politics, this episode is about something much bigger. Truth, nationhood, identity, the power of nations, the future of Australia, and the question of whether we can still sit across from someone we disagree with, look them in the eye and actually listen. This episode is uncomfortable at times. I challenge him, he challenges me. There are moments of tension. There are moments of honesty, and there are moments where the only thing left to do is listen, because the conversations that matter are rarely easy, but they are necessary. So whether you agree with me, agree with Dr. Mo, disagree with both of us, or find yourself somewhere in the middle, I ask you one thing. Listen, not to react, not to attack, not to cut one sentence out of context, but to understand, because Australia does not need more slogans. It needs courage, it needs truth, and it needs people willing to speak to those they were told to hate. This is the conversation Australia needed to have. God bless Australia. I'm here with Dr. Mohamed Mustafa, is that right?
Yes.
Good. And yeah, I've been excited. I've been talking to Dr. Mo for a while now, also known as Beast from the Middle East, is that correct?
Yeah.
How was that? You're in Adelaide today. What were you doing in Adelaide?
So I was at a medical student convention. I was talking about the duty to speak as a doctor, to speak out in humanitarian catastrophes and things like that. And obviously in Adelaide, the Adelaide set, and obviously we'd been chatting a little bit on Instagram and on social media. So yeah, I thought, man, it'd be a good time to have a discussion. Yeah.
So obviously for the viewers out there, you might think this might be a weird interview to be happening, because traditionally they'll say we're on opposite sides, but we're actually more aligned than I think we are, I believe. Yeah. Well, that's what I think. And I guess we'll find out today. But I kind of wanted to start this interview just kind of talking about your background and what you did as a doctor. Obviously, you went to Gaza. I first came across you watching Hassan Piker's stream.
Yeah.
And I was quite intrigued by your story, especially because you're wearing the Australian hat. It was quite funny and a nice touch. I understood what you were doing there. It was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you could kind of go into what made you want to do that in the first place, because that's quite a courageous.
Yeah. Well,
also, some say like a suicide mission almost to go somewhere like that.
Well, while I was there, the hospital did get bombed while we were inside it. It's one of those like life-changing. I went a few times to Gaza during the war. I don't think people really can put into words. I mean, the UN have described it as a genocide. To be actually in and amongst an active genocide as it's going on. When we have a 2,000-pound bomb that's dropped in an apartment residential building, and you're having families bringing in dead children, bombs so big that they literally melt the bodies of people. So people are coming in plastic bags, just melted. And, as this is going on, the hospital grounds are being bombed. Gunshots are being heard all around you. And, you really begin to worry, like, are we going to see... Because, when they start bombing campaigns, it's in the middle of the night and all lines of communication are shut. The internet gets shut, phone communication gets shut. So you really are in the middle of Gaza, cut off from the rest of the world. And all you're seeing is just bombs everywhere, shrapnel flying around, bullets. And it's a really scary thing. But, it's... So
what part of you decided to put yourself in that environment? Like, what was there like a conversation you had with yourself? Were you in prayer? Like, what took that part of your life to go, okay, I'm going to do this? Because I'm really intrigued into that part of you.
I've grown up my whole life as a refugee. I'm a British citizen and an Australian citizen now. But when you grow up and you've seen the world, I've seen a different side to the world. I've seen an unfair and unjust world. I've seen a world that discriminates against certain people from different religions and different skin tones. I come from, third world countries, as some people might call it, right? And I think when you see that and you see like this mass killing of people, sometimes, when you grow up, you always say to yourself, if I saw this when I was around, if this atrocity was happening when I was around, would I do something about it? And my answer always as a kid was yes, I would. I would always do it. I would have faith in God
Yeah.
that I would do this, and that was part of the reason why I went.
So on that, right? So when did you have that realization? Was there were you 5 years old? Did you watch a movie? Did you listen to a song? What inspired that part of you as a human to have that kind of outcome or that way of being?
Do you know, like I said to you, I can't tell you a pinpoint moment, right, where like this is where my life changed or anything like that. What I can say is I just grew up around a family that was very devoted to God, had a belief system in a higher being and a higher purpose, a greater purpose than oneself, and this constant theology of bettering yourself.
Yeah.
And when you grow up around that, and you also grow up around experiencing injustice, one of the things that will make you, what you grow up then naturally is you want to be somebody that makes the world a better place for people facing injustice. Those people in Gaza are probably facing one of the worst injustices of the 21st century, and that's, that was the moment when that started happening in Gaza. The first 21 days after October the 7th, 1,400 kids were killed, verified killed in the first 21 days. That's more kids killed in 21 days than the previous 4 years all around the world, from all the conflicts, all the kids, casualties combined in 21 days.
So when Israel says, because I guess from what I witness and what Israel's stance is, they're saying that their way of being in this war is they're trying to be as calculated as possible to minimize casualties. Do you think that's a true statement? And even if it is true, do you think that the outcome of that is still not good enough? Like where's the line? Do you think that's just a
we're almost 3 years now
Okay.
past October the 7th. And that line of is it self-defense? Every human rights group, including Israeli human rights group, have come out and said that it's a genocide in Gaza, right? You can't accidentally have a genocide.
Yeah.
You can't accidentally by mistake be aiming for the bad guys and kill so many children and women and innocent people and destroy so much civilian infrastructure that the entire world turns against you, right? I think Israel is the most hated now country in the world,
especially in Greece.
Yeah,
86%.
Yeah,
the Greeks are going, they're not very happy.
Yeah, they're not, but they're not because they're building up military bases there and
and the Greek islands.
Yeah. So the idea that now we even entertain this question that their response was justified and it was calculated, and it was that kind of questioning that led to this genocide, because we kept saying, well, the 40 beheaded babies, and that stayed for the first however many months of how horrific October the 7th was. And we were using these events like beheaded babies and babies in ovens, which have all now, even by Israel, have said that none of this actually did happen. But that's what was pushed.
But on that October 7th, do you believe that bad things did happen on October 7th?
Well, you can't deny that civilians were killed on October the 7th. I think it's silly sometimes when people pretend that nothing bad happened on October 7th. And no, bad things did happen on October 7th. But my barometer and my the story didn't start on October the 7th.
Yeah.
If we want to talk about October 7th, what about we talk about October the 6th or October the 5th? Or October the 4th, that year for Palestinians in the West Bank, where there's no Hamas, more Palestinians were killed that year than since the Second Intifada in the last 25 years. And what that meant was that in a place where there is no Hamas, where the government there has signed a declaration handing over its weapons, over 100 children were killed in that year alone. Over 100 kids killed in that year alone. In Gaza, 40% of the children in Gaza before October the 7th had some form of malnutrition. There was already starvation taking place there. So, people who know this conflict and know this history, right? When we look and we go, Israel is using starvation as a weapon of war, but they were using starvation as a weapon for the last 20 years in Gaza.
Yeah.
In Gaza for the last 20
we've been doing it for thousands of years,
really.
Since blockades have been done since medieval times, right?
But now we have the Geneva Convention.
Yeah.
Now we have the United Nations, and we have this rule of law that we talk about, and we have democracies, and so the idea of having a medieval siege in 2025 and 2023, it's just insane.
And so okay, because on that, right? So what I'm hearing is some rules have been broken or agreements, because laws, what are laws? At the end of the day, laws are agreements, right? And ideally you have international agreements between different countries, and you see in the Ukraine-Russian war, lots of rules have been broken. Like the drone warfare there is horrendous, right? What we're seeing there, some of the imagery out of there, where you see Russians lying on the floor and you're seeing these...
Yeah, they're getting killed.
Just killed for nothing, right?
Yeah.
But
on both sides.
Oh yeah, on both sides for sure. But you know, with Israel, I guess their stance, from what I can see, is that we have to do this because Hamas, like they're on a mission, they're on a spiritual mission to destroy the Jews, right? Is that?
I mean, you know, this. I mean, I don't buy it, because look what they're doing to Lebanon.
Yeah.
Look what they're doing in Syria. Look what they did when they bombed Qatar. Like the idea that Israel is doing this in good faith, that they're just trying to preserve or fight back against extremism, when, you know, you look at like. You look at what their ministers say. Their ministers openly say, we will kill the women and children. You know, they're not saying we're just trying to fight Hamas. You show me a minister that's over there saying we're doing Gaza just to fight Hamas. They're openly saying we want to ethnically cleanse the 2 million people there. We want to take the land. We want to build settlements over there. We will never create a Palestinian state. Like these arguments, like, you know, I understand people having them in the first maybe 12 months of this conflict.
Yeah.
But we're so far now into this where I think the whole world and even our own governments are beginning to see that this was never about self-defense.
Yeah.
It was always about a greater Israel project.
So, okay, on that then, because this is important, and I think this is something that never gets talked about.
Yeah.
Let's just say it's true, right? And the theological argument, right? Okay, let's say theologically, Greater Israel is a real, the Zionist movement, the Greater Israel, they want that, and that's their ambition, and that's something that they will never, they have all the power, they have all the weapons, they have all the money, they have everything they need. Then you have the Palestinians, you have Hamas, which is, you know, I guess the government there at the time, or I guess the rebel militia. They also would have to have their own theological way of being to kind of counter that. Like there has to be a counterpoint, right? There has to be a war of two ideas coming together at some point, right?
Not really, because, you know, it's like saying that, like, you know, there's an opposing theological counter to ISIS, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Not really, that's the case. I mean, you know, ISIS are very different to Hamas and Hezbollah. As a matter of fact, Hezbollah and ISIS were fighting against each other, right? Yeah. The idea that they're all the same, right, and they have these religious ideological tendencies is just not true, because Hezbollah are a different sect of Islam to even Hamas, right? Yeah. Hamas are the same sect as Islam as, say, what ISIS are, but ISIS are this extreme, overly extreme, have international and global ambitions with what they want, but Hamas have national ambitions, which is they want a state, right? ISIS want a caliphate and multiple states, hence why they move from territory to territory.
So do those differences, because a lot of people at home have no idea about this stuff, right? Does that come down to the hadiths and different interpretations of hadiths that allow those kind of formations, or what allows that? What environment creates that?
I mean, you know, like, look, I mean, obviously with ISIS, there's a very extreme version of their interpretation, which, you know, most mainstream, if not all mainstream Muslim scholars, you know, denounce that. Like, it's just, I mean, ISIS kill more Muslims than they kill anybody else. Yeah. They've killed more Muslims than they've killed any other group of people, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So this idea that like Muslims somehow support a group that kills them the most out of any other is just, it's like a fallacy, right? And it's not representative of the average Muslim, right? Yeah. The average Muslim doesn't believe in this ideology that ISIS has. Hezbollah and Hamas were organizations that grew out of occupation, right? They have a very different goal to thinking, and even Hezbollah and Hamas, who are both, say, anti-occupation groups, right? Yeah, they're different in the way that they are. With Hamas, there's not been elections since 2004, right? But with Hezbollah, they're part of the electorate process in Lebanon, and they have representatives in parliament in Lebanon. Yeah. So, like, look, you know,
different circumstance.
I don't want to sit here, like, you know, like give you all the different like theological things about different one of them. The point that I'm trying to make is that, like, when we group all of these people together, we're never going to come to a resolution to solve this problem, because each one of them has different political aspirations, each one of them has different religious, theological aspirations, and each one of them has different geopolitical goals and aspirations, right? Yeah, and none of those things, for many parts, a lot of them don't intersect. But one thing that unites, especially Hezbollah and Hamas, is the occupation. Because right now, Israel wants to occupy Gaza, and they want to occupy South Lebanon.
Yeah.
And it's not like they want to occupy Gaza just because Hamas are there. They were occupying Gaza before Hamas was there.
Yeah, it was like 70 years, right?
And it's not like they want to occupy South Lebanon because Hezbollah are there, because they occupied it before Hezbollah was there, and Hezbollah actually formed because they occupied it. So when we talk about these conflicts and like these groups that are involved, it's very important to understand their history.
Yeah.
It's very important to understand their ideology, because if you really want to understand how
these groups have been classified by the US government as terrorist groups, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So I guess for me, the reason why I'm prompting these questions is what I'm trying to get at is, what's if there's like a certain sect of the Israeli elite group that go, no matter what, we're taking that place, like too bad, too sad kind of attitude.
Yeah.
And obviously then you have Hamas and Hezbollah going, well, too bad, too sad, we're going to fight to the death to not let you take this place.
Yeah.
So I'm saying you've got like two unstoppable forces coming together.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm like worried, because these, and like, you know, I was having a chat with my...
But there's a difference between saying, we want this land to ethnically cleanse you as well, and we want to take something. There's a difference between that.
I mean,
and we want to have statehood.
Yeah.
Right? Like, these are two different objectives and goals, right? But you know, Hamas's charter has said that they recognize the state of Israel. They've changed it from their a lot more extreme version when they first appeared, but they said that we'd recognize the state of Israel today at the borders, right? And they were getting involved with the US with negotiations. The reason why they released all the hostages and everything was a path to a two-state solution, right? Now, I'm not a big fan of a two-state solution, right? I would rather it be one state, one democratic state,
country.
one democratic state, because the reason why a two-state solution is not good for someone like me is because my family were ethnically cleansed out of what is now modern-day Israel. Back in 1948. So if we have a two-state solution, what does that mean for me and my family? Are we allowed to return back home to where we're originally from?
Your roots.
So you know, it should be a one-state solution for all, where we could all live in a secular country that has freedom for Jews and Muslims and Christians that all live there equally under the law.
Do you think, okay, let's just talk about that then. Do you think if there, because I agree, I think a one-state solution probably makes more sense, because the idea of a two-state solution invites rivalry. It's like any, like Arsenal, Tottenham, right? Like, you know, if you had Arsenal, Tottenham form together, then there's not going to be a rivalry, right? But we lose that kind of thing. So do you think, like, two questions, I guess. If there was an election in Palestine now, do you think Hamas would still win? And I'm asking that because I'm curious about that, because I actually don't know the answer to that question. And two, if there was a one-state solution, do you think the Palestinians in Palestine, in Gaza and other parts, the West Bank, wherever, would be okay with the country being engulfed, be called, like the entire country be called Israel, let go of the term Palestinian? Like, you can still identify as a Palestinian, but the idea of like the country Palestine kind of cease to exist, but then there is a one-state solution. And in that perfect world, this is a perfect world, there is equality. Like, there is none of these laws where you can't marry, you can't have certain lands. Would that be okay for you? Would you be okay with it?
So like, look, the semantics of what we call it, right? That's not really, I mean, I don't want that to be the hold-up, right? So the semantics of what we call it, that can be something that could have a national referendum and we can pick a name, right? The idea of, you know, who would the Palestinian people elect? The real question is who will Israel allow them to elect? Right? Who's going to be able to stand in office without being assassinated, killed, or imprisoned? Right? That's really the question, because you know, every time there is a potential Palestinian leader.
Have we had any great like Palestinian, like either Christian or Islamic leaders come through who had great promise?
Well, there's a Marwan Barghouti who's in jail now in Israel, and he's seen as a uniter within the Palestinian community in Palestine, but he's in jail and the Israelis won't let him out, right? And you know, it's like a Nelson Mandela thing. You know, Nelson Mandela obviously did some terrorist acts that put him into jail. But you know, this is like, we're talking about a country that's occupied. We're talking about people that are occupied, and the idea that you have to be perfect victims to have freedom is just non-existent in human history. Whether we're talking about the slave revolts, whether we're talking about apartheid South Africa, you know, whether we're talking about the slave trade. Like, there's never ever been this idea of like you have to be a perfect victim to have your rights. People should inherently have those rights.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I get lost, because I agree with you theoretically, right? But in an objective sense, in a way I've looked at human history is there's always been war, and there's always been a country that has a desire, and there's always been a country that might have more ability to do that desire. So Australia, for example, when the British came here, they had far superior technology, far superior ways of combat, and the Aboriginals didn't have stand a chance, really, did they? Where it's a bit different in Palestine. You mentioned before the Palestinians are quite resilient, they're engineers, like they've got like quite a bit of, they know how to use technology, they like it's kind of like Iron Man, they could build anything out of a cave, with the famous Tony Stark moment. That's kind of like what I kind of got out of you when you said that. It reminded me of Tony Stark, where we didn't have that with Aboriginals. They didn't even have bows and arrows, right? They had no chance, really. So the difference is, well, they just took what they could get, and that was it. And now we have Australia, right? Yeah. What's if Israel has that mindset with that area? Yeah. It's going to take more than just a Hamas to stop that. It's going to take an entire world to turn around and go, you can't do that.
A few things. First of all, like the when the British came here was a very different world. We're talking about where empires still existed. Yeah. And also, it doesn't mean that it was right what the British did to the Aboriginal people here, right? Yeah. And I think we have to bear that in mind when we apply it to, say, Palestine. The Palestinians have had to pay a price of one of the greatest crimes in human history, which was the Holocaust, that happened in Europe, with Christians doing it to Jews. And the price of that has been paid by the Muslim world by having this manufactured state that was put in. Whether people believe in biblically or not, I'm talking about the actual legalities of it. It was imposed, the British mandate for Palestine. Yeah.
Australia's fault, by the way.
Yeah. It was the agreement. The agreement that they told to the Palestinians was that if you rebel against Ottoman rule, we'll give you this state eventually. But obviously they'd promised something else to another group of people, and hence why when they had the vote at the UN and they partitioned Palestine, they gave 53% to the Jewish people, and then they gave the 47% to the Arabs. But at the time, the Jewish population was only like less than 30%, and the population of the Muslims and the Arabs and the Christians at the time, who were the Palestinians, was over 70%, yet they were getting 40% of the land after they were being told they were going to get everything because it was their home, and now they're going to get less than 50%, and this minority is going to get the majority, right? Yeah. So obviously they rejected that. And the Arab countries around also rejected that because they saw it as...
So what country was the first to step in and go, and that's not good enough? Was that Iran, or was that another country?
No. I mean, Iran had nothing to do with it at this stage, right? Yeah, but we're talking about like here, we're going right all the way back to the semantics of how it all started. Either way, I think the overarching thing about how it started and the partition plan and promises that were broken and this, that, and the other. At the end of the day, the formation of the State of Israel was formed by ethnically cleansing 750,000 Palestinians from their homes, right? That's how it was formed. Those 750,000 Palestinians many of them live in the surrounding countries, whether it's Lebanon, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia. Many of those Palestinians live in that area. That's where the majority of Palestinian refugees are, right? Then you have Palestinian refugees like me who live in Europe or Australia or other parts of the world, right? Yeah. But it's never been something that's been even acknowledged by the Israeli state, and it's written within the UN chapter, the right to return for Palestinian refugees, which we're not allowed to return. So if you are Jewish right now in Australia, and you were born here, your parents were born here, your grandparents were born here, your great-grandparents were born here, right? And my father, who's born in Gaza, right? If me and you were to go to Israel today, you would get citizenship, Israeli citizenship, you would get land, and you would get support by the government to move there. Me, I wouldn't be allowed to come in, even though my father was born on that land.
So there's a two-tier system there.
It's not just a two-tier system, it is the denial and the erasure of Palestinian people.
So I guess that's my, and I'm not trying to sound insincere here, or I'm not trying to sound facetious, I'm just trying to be very objective in what I'm saying. What I'm hearing is Israel wants their way, and they're going to get their way one way over another, and unfortunately there's victims in that. Yeah. So how do we, as people of the world, and this is a question to everyone, even my audience, how do we as people of the world bear that? Because do we see a reality where Israel says, okay, we're not going to do this anymore?
Well, look, I mean, me appealing to international law and appealing to morality obviously doesn't seem to be what works in this modern day. But all right,
some people don't. Honestly, like, I'm not trying to be a dickhead here, but and you can swear, by the way.
Yeah.
Some people don't care.
No, I understand
about that.
But I tell you what, people do care about.
Yeah.
They don't want tens of millions of Arab and Muslim migrants going into Europe. Right. They don't want the price of oil to spike up to crash their economies. People don't want that. But that's what we're seeing right now because we're seeing the destabilization of all of these Middle Eastern countries by one state. And this one state does not want to define its borders, because if you were to sit here and you were to ask an Israeli to define their borders, they couldn't define you their borders, because they want the West Bank, they want Gaza, they occupy the Golan Heights, which is Syrian territory. In northern Israel, that is now, there's parts of that is actually southern Lebanon that is being occupied.
Well, it's in the flag, right?
Well, yeah.
Israel flag, the two blue lines. The Nile
from the river to the sea. Yeah.
Well, it's the Nile to the Euphrates, right?
Right. So this is what I mean about it depends which Israeli you ask. They'll give you a different definition of what their borders are.
Yeah.
Now the problem is you have millions and millions, even tens of millions of people living within this imaginary borderline of what Israel is. What's going to happen to those people? And will people be willing to live as second-class citizens, right, in their homes that they've lived in for centuries? The answer is no.
Yeah.
Right? And if that's what's going to happen, then there's going to be perpetual conflict in that region of the world. And that perpetual conflict is going to affect all of us, like it did when the Strait of Hormuz was closed. And if we think that's bad, imagine what would happen if we had a water crisis. Imagine if a nuclear bomb went off. Imagine if you had tens of millions of people becoming refugees and going over the border in Europe. Europe would not tolerate this.
Yeah.
So it's a self-preservation thing as well,
because this is the way I have conversations with Zionists sometimes, and there's always two trains of thought I get at. One is, we're doing this for self-preservation because we want our country Israel. Okay, fair enough. And then the other side, the more ambitious, the more Israel first, I'd say. We want great Israel. We want to create a superpower nation, and we'll do nothing. Like, nothing will stop us on that mission.
Yeah.
And they will employ any strategy possible to make that happen, right? It's like when the Romans invaded the Goths or the Celts, right? Yeah. The Romans slaughtered 2 million Celts. They didn't think twice about it. They just did it. Yeah. So you kind of have that old school Roman. But it feels that way.
But it's 2026. We can't have this idea of.
But what does that mean?
But we can't have we can't have this idea where we go, well, might is right, because I don't want to live in that world. And actually,
no, I'm not saying I want to live in that world, but I'm just saying that might be the reality.
No. That may be the reality that you accept now, but it's not going to be the reality when, say, China come knocking on Australia's door, or another superpower comes and we can't defend this land, and then what we're going to say, well, might is right, guys, we may as well buckle up and just, it is what it is. We would never accept that. And the idea that people are going to accept this is never going to think, and it's like slavery. Slavery happened for 400 years. It was horrific. Families were executed in front of each other if people rebelled. Fathers were humiliated in front of their children and then executed. And even after 400 years, slaves and black people still got their freedom at the end of it, right? Yeah. The occupation of Ireland went on for 700 years, where genocide,
maybe 400 years, my people were enslaved. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what happens at the end? People will eventually keep resisting and keep fighting for their freedom. And what I'm saying is like this idea of just saying buckle up and it is what it is. That also is not the reality. People are not going to accept that. So we can accept the reality that, hey, this is what they want and they're just powerful, so they'll do it. But then we also have to accept the reality that it is going to radicalize millions of people. It's going to destabilize the world economy, and people are going to resist, and they're going to resist in the most extreme ways, because what you're proposing is something very extreme, which is the displacement of tens of millions of people all over the Middle East.
Maybe more, hundreds of millions potentially. Yeah. That's kind of my point, I guess. The whole buckle up thing. Like, there's two parts to me. One is like, I am ready and buckled up because I am afraid of that happening. The might is right kind of attitude, because that's just how human history has gone down.
Yeah.
Like even the ancient Greeks, but when we first came to our lands, we eradicated 4 species of subhuman. Like we literally extincted them. So it's like there is a darker history to humanity of extinction and destruction and death and blood. And, like it's not like it's something new. And I want to buy into the it's 2026. Like it's 2026, but we still have 50 million slaves today. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not like. It's like this is probably the most peaceful time we've ever had in human history, and I guess I'm not trying to be like a defeatist here or a nihilist. I'm not being a nihilist here. I just want to kind of get our audiences aware of what's happening and how, because the thing is now there's like 2 camps, and it's become political. It's like you've got the communists versus the alt-right, whatever. You have the blacks versus the whites. You have women versus men, and like you mentioned abortion. Like this might be a thing we disagree on. I don't know. Actually, I'm not sure, because I'm not sure what the Islamics believe in with abortion, right? But like for me, like there's a 70 million genocide happening every year with abortion. 70 million abortions a year every year for the last 60 years.
But okay, so going into that, you're obviously fighting and you're campaigning for you're pro-life, right?
Yeah.
You don't believe in people should get abortions, right?
I think that life is pretty sacred, and I feel like it's...
So if that's the case and you're willing to fight for that politically, right?
They're voiceless creatures, right? I think abortion's like, it's like a voice, like Palestinians, like it's a voiceless
So if you're
human
saying,
being.
but you're saying that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
If I was to turn around, right, and to use your same argument and say, well, the reality is just things happen, there are accidents. Sometimes people feel ready to have kids and then they break up and then they don't want the child. That's the reality of life. I guess we have to buckle up and just accept 70 million, right?
Exactly.
So this is what I mean about the idea that we can be selective about which lives we go, well, that's the reality of life, buckle up.
Yeah.
And the ones that we feel like we can fight for. And that's where I feel like sometimes, like say, your perspective on things, there is a flaw here. There is a divide between, your pro-life stance and the buckle up. This is human nature.
Well, it's not my stance. I guess it's my coping mechanism, because like when I look
So why can't you cope when it comes to abortion, but you can cope when it's Palestine and displacement of tens of millions of people? I can cope. I see a way out of, like for me, like with abortion, for example, I don't feel a threat of my life. Like I feel a greater threat. Like if I was to become very, like a freedom fighter, for example, and really go hard and say, you know what? No more of this Great Israel project. If I did that, then I'd fear for my life extremely. Like I'd see that become like, because there are greater powers who would want that to happen. If I'm a threat to a project, goodbye, George. Do you understand? So I have that conversation with myself. But surely,
So like, am I ready to martyr myself for Palestine? I don't know. That's the kind of question I'd ask myself.
Right. Okay. So you're worried about the consequences of fighting for equality in, say, the Middle East with regards to Palestine and Israel. And look,
is it worth me?
You wouldn't die on that hill.
I don't know. Well, it's not I wouldn't. I just don't know if I would.
Okay.
I haven't had that chance to pray on that.
So the thing is like, look, the way I see it is like this. Look, I just want equality, right?
Yeah.
From the river to the sea, everyone to be equal on that piece of land, right there.
But
I also want to be able to go home to my village, and live there and have my family there and be able to experience actually having my entire family around at the same time. We've never been able to have an Eid together as a family because some of my family are refugees to this day that live in Lebanon or live in Jordan that can't travel. So we can't all meet each other at the same time. So my thing is it's always been about freedom and equality for everyone, regardless of who it is.
And I hear that, and I do respect what you're saying there. I guess that's the great question. For me, I think if we're going to see a change, right, it's going to have to come from Israel, right? It's going to have to be a political/spiritual effort of Israel to go, or at least that sect of Israel who doesn't want a Great Israel project to step in and kind of be the...
sometimes it has to come from Israel itself, but you can change the conditions that allow that. When it was apartheid South Africa, it wasn't that white people decided to view black people as the same now and change their mind overnight. It was the fact that they were being sanctioned. It was the fact that the economy was being destroyed and they couldn't enjoy life the same way that they could. And I feel like if you actually applied international law to both sides, and whether that's Hamas, whether that's the PLO, whether that's Israel, and you applied international law, i.e. if you break international law and you kill women and children collectively, then you should be sanctioned. And if you were to do that, and Israel was to be sanctioned, or you were to cut off the weapons supply to Israel, which is what the UN have mandated to stop a genocide, if we as countries were to follow these laws, we wouldn't have to have 10 million people be displaced, or however many people in the Greater Israel Project or whatever, and we could all actually just live in peace, because we're all forcing this side to abide by the rules.
That sounds nice in theory, right? But like even South Africa, right? South Africa now is a hellhole. Like when the first thing that happened was after those laws changed, the borders were just completely open. People from all parts of Africa rushed in. If you're a white person there, you can get murdered.
You can get murdered if you're a black person there as well.
Of course, but I'm just saying, like, was it a good out?
Yeah, but we're talking about like, oh, is it an ideal place to live right now? Well, no. There's obviously though been decades and centuries of colonialism there, of hierarchies that are there. White people over there still own 85% of the land. So apartheid might have got rid of, but the money is still controlled by the same people. And there's all kinds of problems right here. Yeah. To simply put there and go, well, there's no point in having, getting rid of apartheid, because what's after apartheid? It's still a pretty bad system. It's a bad system, but it's a much more fair system than having millions of people living under military rule. Because at least in Africa, if you're black or white, you can all vote in a democratic election.
Yeah.
You can't do that in Palestine right now. And I'm 100% sure I would rather live in an imperfect Palestine, Israel, whatever it is, that has a democratic vote for all of us, than one where we are still living under chains and military occupation.
So this is a deeper philosophical thing. Because Socrates, for example, is very famous in saying that not everyone should be able to vote.
Right, yeah.
He believed women shouldn't vote, and he believed men who didn't own land or didn't have intelligence should vote, because he believed that the masses were very easily moved
swayed. Right,
by drama, right? And if you looked at ancient Greece, politics and drama came together. So you could use examples like populism, right? If you have, I don't know, Donald Trump, for example, or JFK, or whoever it is, saying the populist thing, it's very easy to win the masses, and they don't have to even think straight. They might not even know. Like, I'm sure you've seen interviews where lefties and righties are being interviewed. Like, why are you here today? They're like, and they ask one question, have no idea why they're there. Right? So what's the pull for you in this idea that we need equality in the sense of voting as well? Like, because I asked myself this question, like. And I've been asking myself this question for the last 2 weeks. Like, do you think everyone should have the right to vote? Like, honestly, like, do you think that's a real thing?
Yeah. Look, democracies work when a population is informed.
Yeah.
Right. We live in a world of misinformation. We live in a world of too much information. We also live in a world where billionaires control social media networks and have big stakes in mainstream media outlets, and they can really control the narrative. So it can make a lot of people, I think there's something that Denzel Washington said, which is, if you don't watch the news, you're uninformed, and if you watch the news, you're misinformed, right? But the idea that we can take away democracy and the right for people to vote from people, where does that stop? Because today you might have the right to vote today, but tomorrow it might not be a good thing for you to vote, right? And someone might take that away. Who has that power? And ultimately, that power of taking away people's right to vote, whether they are Christian or Muslim or Jewish, whether they're gay, straight or whatever, whether they are a naturalized citizen or whether they're born in that country. Once you start discriminating of who can and who can't vote, the system then also breaks down, because if, for example, we do this rule in this country and Muslims can't vote, right, what good would it be for a political party to do anything for the Muslim community, because their vote doesn't matter? If women couldn't vote, why would I want to do anything for women? Because women's votes don't matter. As a matter of fact, then what we decay into, what we fall into, is we fall into a terrible system that now starts pushing out and not looking after minorities and looking after people at the fringes of society. So if everybody has a say, society tends to be, if everyone has a say, tends to be more fair and tends to be better run as a society. Hence why the development in the last 50 years, when we've had these democracies, has been a lot better for human rights, say, in this part of the world, than we have had in the last 1,000 years. And a large part of that is because everyone's had the right to vote.
I guess for me it'd be more like the experiment of that. This is the kind of question I'm grappling with, and I'm not married to any idea. I'm just entertaining ideas here, because there's a part of me goes, maybe it would be better if the true thought leaders, like the true critical thinkers, the ones who are actually the contrarians, who are willing to be the ones that ask the tough questions, maybe they're the ones that should be able to vote, because if the rest can't even critically think, or they just rely on, they've got TikTok brain, or they're just like consumed by media, or they're very easily manipulated. You know, media companies are owned by a fair few amount of people, right? And those people have a lot of power.
Well, I think the solution should be is you know, don't let billionaires buy social media or corporate media, or if they do own it, there has to be many regulations that go into it. And
but the only problem is then you're leaning to like, it's like a rules-based society versus a values-based society.
Well, it's not about a rules-based or a values-based society. Like, you know, at the end of the day, things can be dangerous. You know, a car gets you from A to B and is super useful.
Yeah.
But we also have rules on the road, and we have traffic lights, and we have speed signals, and you have indicators on your car. That's not because we're trying to over-regulate people or whatever. It's just that we understand that these cars are moving very, very fast, and they can cause accidents that can kill people.
Yeah.
So therefore we regulate it. We say you're not allowed to operate this vehicle if you're drinking alcohol or high on drugs.
Yeah.
And this is the thing with like things like social media. Social media, the reality of it is social media brings out a lot of news, and the algorithm is what's feeding, and this is what, you know, Anthony Albanese and...
Well, I know directly, just so you know, I you know the term the woke right, that was a term I coined, and then I saw Netanyahu the next week using the term. He actually mentioned in a video. I watched this podcaster say the word the woke, so that actually came from...
Really?
So,
wow, okay.
Yeah, so that when I saw that, I actually, my heart kind of sunk, because then I realized that you're right, the algorithm does deliver ideas. You have to be kind of careful. Like I have a responsibility. If I'm reaching millions of people, I kind of have a responsibility with the way I say things.
Yeah.
Because the woke right, that was when me and the NSN were having massive debates.
Yeah.
And then next minute you're seeing Netanyahu using the term the woke right, and now all the Israelis are using the term the woke right.
Right. Yeah.
So like you're right, the social media does have that power. But I guess my problem is, right, you're right, we do need rules, right? We do need cars and rules and regulations and stop signs, all this stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you go to places like Bali, they don't have rules in their traffic, and there's like almost like a creative chaos. People get hurt, but like it works. Like, you know, there's almost like it works there. So I guess my point is, if you have two groups,
but it can work better.
It can work better, sure. But if you have two groups of people, right? You have people. Are you a moral realist or are you a moral non-realist? So do you believe morality is something that is objective?
No,
are they cosmic laws to the universe?
I understand the question. Look, I mean, I don't think you have to be an extreme either way.
Yeah.
You know, I think you can be pragmatic with your morality.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's the thing like the question about like drugs. Like, do you believe that we should legalize drugs?
No.
No, right. But if you go to places like Portugal, who have legalized drugs, the consumption of drugs has gone down. Is that true, or is that just academic propaganda? No, it's true. So, because what they do is they treat drug abuse as a healthcare problem and not as a criminal problem, and because of that, they've found rates of addiction and all that kind of stuff going down, right? So, if you really wanted to get rid of, say, drugs, for example, in a society, I'm not saying my position or anything. I'm just saying the argument would be is well, if you legalize it and you control it as a government and you tax it, and then you use that revenue to pay for other services, what you do is then you're not paying this big, massive bill trying to take down gangs, and the crime goes down because people aren't...
Yeah, you can regulate it through the government.
You can regulate it through the government,
it's kind of like the idea of why weed is legalized in America.
So your point about like this morality conversation about a morality realist, morality thing, that's a moral realism thing. Yeah. Would you then accept drugs into society?
I guess my question is, who determines what is the cosmic laws of this universe in terms of moral realism? Like who gets to... So like for me, theologically, I'd be like, well, I believe Christ is King and Christ is Lord, and I believe Christian ideas are like the closest thing to cosmic law, the closest thing to moral realism.
Right, okay.
Where someone like you, I'd think, being Islamic, would be like, oh yeah, I think Islam is the most closest thing to moral realism, the closest thing. Then you have the atheists, the communists, who are altogether don't believe, they don't believe in moral realism. They think morality is subjective, and that's why you have things like the LGBT movement, where like, you know, there's no real definitions of man and women. You are what you feel you are, and that's where I can. So like that, and that's where it comes from. It's like if you don't have a moral if you think morality is subjective, not objective, then you can have those things occur, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I guess who would be the arbiter of moral realism in this perfect world that we want? That's my question. Like, would it be an Islamic rule? Would it be a Christian rule? Would it be a Jewish rule?
Well, look, I mean, it depends what kind of society that you're living under. If you're living under a secular government, then church and state are separate in a secular society.
But
and morality is then derived from many things. Morality can be derived from religious text, from theological text, where people can have their opinions on, and many people do have their opinions on abortion and LGBTQ rights because of their religious morality things. Some people have a different view. Some people have the view that we live in a society where everyone's free to choose which God to worship and what lifestyle to lead. And that should come fundamentally first, because it means that your rights are protected as a religious person to practice your religion, but this person's right not to practice religion is also protected, right? Yeah. And that's then a new form of morality, this neoliberalism.
But do you think that secularism has been a good, like, I would look at secularism, I mean, for Australia, I think the 1960s onwards is the idea of secularism, which was pushed by foreign lobbyist groups, by the way. Do you think that's been successful? I don't know.
Well,
if secularism has been successful.
I think in 1967, when they changed the law that Aboriginal people were flora and fauna.
That was 1994.
No, that was 1967. I think it was.
No, I think in this state it was. I think, or maybe from what I read, I could be wrong, but I think it's actually 1994 that like if you hit an Aboriginal with your car and killed them, you actually wouldn't get done for murder. It was considered killing a fauna. That's how I think it was
1994. No, I'm sure that the federal law was changed in 1967.
I think
but you can double check.
I'll double check, but I think it was even earlier than that.
But this idea that like it was ideal back then is just not true, right?
Yeah.
There was a huge amount of moral inequality that was there that we still see to this day with Indigenous people here. Look, my point is this: is look, I want to live in it's controversial for me to come on your show. Right, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
I am somebody who
I respect you, by the way, for doing this, because no one else has. And to me, to be honest, you're the greatest leader in Australia for what you're fighting for.
Yeah.
And I think, I appreciate and acknowledge you doing that, because it's going to take this kind of conversation to help.
I think the crux of it is like, look, people might have a go at me for coming on your show and speaking to you, right?
And
having a theological debate, talking as a Christian, as a Muslim, as someone who supports One Nation and Pauline Hanson, as someone who doesn't, right? Yeah. But what I felt was really important is that when there's so much tension in communities all over Australia, what we need to do is people who have large platforms, people who listen to them. I feel that we should come together and open up dialogue between communities, right?
Yeah, of course.
And it doesn't happen on mainstream media. It happens on social media. That's where a lot of this content is being pushed out, and that's where people are being radicalized. So I want this to be a more regular thing.
Yeah.
And not just me, but I want this to be a communication where we have Muslims and people from the opposite end of the aisle, whether it's Greens, whether it's independent media, to talk to each other, right? Because when things begin to get tense in our communities here in Australia, we need to have an outlet, where people on social media, people that are on the peripheries, that have a large following and hundreds of millions of views, which you and Sam and Chucky and all of you guys have, we need to be able to come together and actually have an honest conversation with each other and help together, because we live in this country together, right? To bring down the tensions in this country. That's what we need to do. And I'm happy and I'm open to answer difficult questions.
Yeah. And you have been, by the way. And I appreciate that, because for me, I fundamentally believe the issues that we're facing is that there are people in this world who have moral, realistic, have objective cosmic truths, right? Religion tends to, as an Islamic man, I'm not sure how deep in your faith you are, right? We haven't gone there yet. You would have cosmic truths that you think Allah has put onto this universe, right? For me as a Christian, I believe in moral truths that I believe if you don't stand by these moral truths, there are consequences. However, we are a minority now in terms of the world, especially in Australia. 70% of this population believes that morality is subjective, and it's not necessarily a cosmic truth. It's just what feels and is workable in society. So, for example, a traffic light Like a traffic light isn't like some sort of command from God. That you could argue that a traffic light is a moral subjective truth. You know, objectively, it might not be the best way of doing things, but it's our way of doing things. So for us to come together, there has to be a point where we can come to terms with, like, for example, I've talked to, I won't say names, but I've talked to a really powerful figure from the left and said, hey, we should chat, you know, and try and get to some common ground and see where we, and that person's like, no, because you fundamentally disagree with moral, like my morality. So how can I talk to someone like you?
Well, so I would, you know, look,
like it's almost like
I think, you know, especially, you know, you're a Christian, I'm a Muslim, right? Yeah. There's a lot where we overlap.
Yeah.
Love thy neighbour. Do unto others as you'd like to be done unto yourself. Look after the poor and the sick. And treat the stranger with respect. There's a lot, don't steal, don't lie. There's a lot where actually we overlap on, right? And I would guarantee you that the average person who maybe is not religiously bound also doesn't believe in stealing, also doesn't believe in...
Questionable.
Yeah. But
we're seeing that, I'm just saying, because we are seeing the states where stealing is now like, you can just go steal.
But people are stealing because of poverty, right?
Yeah.
So if you were to fix the other one, which is looking after thy neighbour and feeding the poor,
then you
wouldn't have people stealing.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So I think the average person is very much aligned with this. It's when religion begins to take a very extreme form, where we have the most extreme elements of our religion, right? So for example, where you might fall, or your hurdle might be, is like, you know, the idea of pro-life, right?
Yeah.
The idea that you can't get an abortion, you know, because it's the sanctity of life of that child.
Yeah.
Somebody who doesn't have that same objective morality, say, that you have, will disagree with you on that. Now, how do we as a society move forward, right, with obviously a very large Christian population here that might share the same views as you?
I'm sure the Islamic people would also feel the same.
Well,
right?
you know, with Muslims we have like we have a slightly different, you know, there's certain sects within Islam where you can have an abortion up until a certain date, depending if there's particular reasons.
Is that Quranic or is that Hadith rules?
Look, I mean, it's a bit of a mixture of both of who you understand.
So interpretations of the Quran.
Yeah, it's certain interpretations of the Quran and interpretations of the Hadith, but essentially I don't want to give you a fatwa here, right? Yeah,
no, it's fine. Yeah, it's all right.
But I'm just saying, like, the general principle is Muslims are not as so black and white on this issue as, say, you know, someone like yourself,
an Orthodox Christian.
Yeah, like an Orthodox Christian.
Even in the same with the Christians, there's also Christian sects that don't care. Like you'd say the more evangelicalized, New Age Christians would also be like that.
So there's a difference of opinion, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would generally think most Muslims, you know, don't get abortions, you know, or wouldn't pick it for themselves. But, you know, we live in an age as well where, like, you know, you as a man having that decision over a woman, it's not something that that society has moved on from. You know, there's a woman autonomy now, and I think society has moved on from telling women what to do. So what then happens is,
point, it's like saying, this is my issue, right? Because to me, and I want this is not directed to you, it's directed to my audience and the left. It's like saying to a slave owner, well, you don't own slaves, so how dare you tell me what I do with my slave? Like, to me, a slave is a voiceless person, an unborn child is a voiceless human, right? So when the woman says, well, I'm a woman, you have no right to say, it's like, well, but it doesn't matter.
But when we're talking about, like, say, abortion with that kind of stuff, and look, you know,
we're going to do abortion debate, but I'm just saying that's my argument.
The thing is we're talking about it's her body that is required to keep this other body alive. Yeah. It's her health that is at risk. It is the nutrients in her blood that is feeding this this group of cells or this fetus or whatever stage it's at, right? And that's very different to having something that is not connected to your body. This is connected to your body, and it is connected to your health, and it's connected to your well-being, and it's also something that once it's born, you have to look after it now for the next however many years, for life. You know, it's not just 18 years, that's just the law, but you know, it's your child.
It's a life commitment,
it's a sacred
right? Commitment of life,
So, like, you know, there's no real comparison here. Like, I understand men having an issue because it's their sperm, you know, they're the father. They want to be able to have a say in this, right, as well. And I understand the grievances that some men have
It's
in
also
this.
just it's a soul. Like
I understand, but
like a soul is genderless. Like I don't look at my soul as a male or female. I look at the soul as a genderless being. Like to me, a soul.
So why can't you see trans people like that, or non-binary
Well,
people as genderless?
I can, like,
if they choose to identify like that.
I have a pretty radical view on transgenderism. I think transgenderism is souls who maybe, and this is pretty anti-orthodox by the way, sorry my orthodox community, but I will keep repeating this. I think transgenderism could be the effects of a past life that they were a different gender, and that hasn't left them yet, and they're feeling the spiritual effects of that from a past life, which is also anti-Islamic and anti-Orthodox Christian, by the way.
Right.
But that's one. I'm not married to the idea, but I can understand. Like I can see why transgenderism exists. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't think it's a total fallacy. I just think there are different answers and different ways we can handle it that would be more workable for society.
But this is the thing. Like, not everything is going to be fair.
Yeah.
Right. Because what we do is we objectively look at something like pregnancy, right? Yeah. And when a child is born, and a father has to pay childcare. Why does a father have to pay childcare? If the father doesn't want anything to do with the baby, why does he have to pay childcare? Like, what's the reason? What's the logical reason behind it?
Because he was responsible for the creation of that life, right?
It's not just about him being responsible for the creation of that life. What it's about is as a society, that child needs to be looked after. And therefore the responsibility lays with that father, the person who fathered or gave the sperm or the DNA material, to look after that child. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the person who gave after, but there has to be a father figure, right? Or a father who pays.
Yeah,
Why?
some sort of fatherhood,
Yeah, some kind of father that pays or at least supports the child, because the chances for this child to succeed in life, there needs to be monetary support.
Agreed.
Hence why we always hold the father to that esteem. Now that might not be fair, but for society, that is the best thing for society, because it means that this child has someone that will look after it, right? Yeah. So this is what we're talking about, where like stuff like this, where it matters between men and women.
Yeah.
Not everything is going to be fair.
Yeah.
Not everything is going to be objectively 50-50, because women have to have the burden of carrying a child for 9 months. Now I feel, even from a medical point of view, say you were to take away abortion doesn't stop. Women then will.
I guess my argument of abortion, and for me primarily, is like you don't have to actually, like, say there is a complication, right, and you have to perform a medical abortion.
Yeah.
You don't actually have to kill the child. You can actually just deliver the baby alive. Like if you have a late-term abortion, you still have to deliver the baby. It's just a stillbirth. It's a dead baby. You put the potassium in the heart, the baby's dead, and then you deliver the baby dead, right? My argument is just deliver it alive and give it up for adoption. We have a 2.5-year adoption waiting list in Australia. People want babies. People are dealing with fertility issues. Most of us are consuming 2 plastic cards worth of plastic every 2 weeks. Our fertility issues are terrible. On average, it takes 1.5 years just for one person to have a child now. Like, we are having significant fertility issues in this country. Extinction level rates, where now the government has to rely on mass immigration as a form of replenishing our GDP.
But what we're doing is we're bringing all these things into it now.
Yeah.
Let's just take it one step at a time, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's my position. I think
but let's just take it one step at a time, right?
Yeah.
You know, we talk about, there's, first of all, my friend adopted a child.
Yeah.
He's a Christian man.
Oh yeah.
And he adopted a child, and it's been amazing to watch that and his level of faith to do that. And he wanted to bring this child in, and he wanted to look after him, and he wanted to grow his family. And watching the adoption process there isn't a 2.5-year waiting list. They are struggling to find people to look after these kids. And these kids that are living in and out of foster care, it's a real problem. Now, my thing would be is, if you're an absolutist on this, let's work around all these other issues first, right? Yeah. So we can give women the opportunity or the ability that if they chose to keep this child, that they would be well supported afterwards. But the reason why a lot of people get abortions is because they believe that they can't afford it.
Yeah.
They believe that they are not going to be able to look after it or give it the life that they feel this child deserves.
Yeah.
Hence why people get abortions. So
you think it's an economic failure?
And again, this goes back to these principles. Why do we, say, religious people focus so much on these particular issues like abortion, right? Yeah. And LGBTQ rights and all the rest of it, right? Yeah. But then they forget the other parts, which is feeding the poor, looking after the sick, investing in that kind of stuff. Why is it that we are religious in one sense, but then we go about and our main objectives is capitalism and making money. And Jesus, if he was to come back now, he wouldn't be a capitalist. He'd probably be a socialist.
I reckon
he's a refugee from the Middle East, which we're trying to get rid of over here. That Pauline Hanson doesn't want. These are all big contradictions.
I know. I hear you on that. I do fundamentally agree. I think the economic models have failed. I don't agree that socialism is the answer. I don't believe communism is the answer because. I
don't think there's many people that believe communism is the answer either.
I think the answer is actually something greater than that, something that's even maybe the issue of all the economic models, and this is a discussion I haven't had yet, and I'm happy to have it with you, is the economic models that we all have in capitalism rely on the fact that we have stock and human that always comes through. Right now we don't have that, so India is now creating an entire economic situation where they can literally mass immigrate their people for economic benefit. Like India deals with countries. Like if you want to come to this country as an Indian, it's much easier. Say if you're a German or Palestinian, it'll be much right. They have economic deals. So like the production of people is now a commodity. What I'm trying to say is like places like Australia haven't put enough effort economically in its fertility. Like we don't care.
It's not just about like fertility, because it's not that the issue of declining birth rates is not a fertility issue, right? We have advanced medicine here. We have IVF treatment here. Many people can have births straight away. Like you said, there's a epidemic of abortions. There's a lot of people that are getting pregnant, right? Yeah, it's not necessarily a fertility problem, right? That is one aspect of many. Right, the other aspects are economical. That's the main problem. Economical aspects, right? Yeah, but the problem is we are choosing to neglect economical aspects, and we focus on things as a country like GDP. Right, GDP is not a good indicator for your ability to live and your quality of life.
Agreed.
GDP in this country has continuously gone up. Have wages continuously gone up?
No.
Have house prices become affordable?
No.
Right? Is food prices? Have they come down? They continue going up.
No.
So even though GDP goes up every single year, our quality of life is going down every single year. So what's happening is we're measuring the economy based on GDP, and we're not looking at the quality of life within people, right? Yeah.
Agreed.
So what's happening is when you're talking about India or Indian people, right? Yeah, Indian people are highly educated, highly well motivated to come and work. And what the government looks at when they bring in immigrants from India or anywhere else in the world is they're looking at somebody who they've not had to pay their education for, right? They've got their degrees and everything else.
If they're real.
Well, most of the time. Most of the time they are.
Tongue in cheek.
But you know what I mean. No, I understand.
There's a lot of Uber drivers are engineers.
Yeah, that's a fair, mate, that's a fair point, and it's a big issue in Canada, by the way.
It is. Yeah.
All right. So, people generally speaking, they come here educated that our government hasn't had to pay for. And again, it's about money. So rather than investing in money in educating people here in Australia, Australians, to have these qualifications so they can fill these jobs, we're not investing in our universities. Instead, what we're investing in is bringing in foreign students to pay high fees so they can fund the universities.
The merging here of the LA University, it's an absolute disgrace.
So these things about declining birth rates and stuff like that, it's not a fertility issue. It is an economic issue. And our governments, this idea that GDP is what drives us, when really we're not looking at other factors. We're not looking at things like access to education, access to healthcare, access to housing, livable wages, prices of food, prices of fuel, livable cities. Like these things are not looked at. So
that's exactly right, because in this country, for example, the super industry funds, they hold the power. Like this budget was developed for them. So you're right. The reason why the Prime Minister Albanese has to go, what defines an Australian? What defines an Australian? Like this conversation about what defines an Australian is like, they need an excuse to pump people into this country, because if they don't, it will collapse the economy. Our economy will collapse without mass immigration, right? Who does that affect? The boomer class, who have the investments, the people who their entire investments are reliant on property, and Australia's banking and mining corporations. So from people saying, "Oh, you hate immigrants," I don't hate immigrants. I hate that our government is using mass immigration as a way to falsify and prop up this false economy that we have.
So why then is it, right?
Yeah.
Because you support One Nation and you support Pauline Hanson.
Yeah.
Why is it then that you're okay with her constantly bashing Muslims, and talking about immigrants as if they are the problems in this society, when immigrants are here most of the time legally and are working jobs that is being asked of them to work,
Yeah.
right? Why is it then that you are not more angry at the system that's created this? And why are you not seeing from Pauline Hanson actual solutions to this? Because she says, we don't want to bring people in from the Middle East and Africa,
Yeah.
but that's not going to resolve our economic structure that relies on GDP growth and continual growth. Like, how do you square that circle?
There's two angles to that. So first off is like the identity of Australia. Like a lot of people like the identity of Australia to remain its British Commonwealth roots. So we kind of want it to stay like Australian as a Commonwealth British country, which is predominantly Anglo-Celtic peoples, right?
Right.
I don't want millions of Greeks here. I like being a minority Greek in this country. I signed up to a Commonwealth country, so that's one angle, right? So that comes to identity. Pauline Hanson is a unique figure. Like when we're both Arsenal fans, right?
Yeah.
If I say, "What do you think of Tottenham shit?" and "What do you think of shit Tottenham?" Right? It's the same. Like, "What do you think of Muslim shit?" "What do you think of shit Muslims?" Like it's kind of like a call to rally troops around.
But that's not right though. Like,
I know it's not right.
she's discriminating against Muslims to rally around the troops. Then what I would say then to that is like, okay, forget that it hurts my feelings, right? Yeah,
it's a sport. It's a sport.
Right,
it's a sporting thing.
But it's a sport with real life consequences. Because like, look at Bondi.
Yeah.
Look at Christchurch. Which was happened by a Queenslander, where she's a senator from.
Yeah.
That was an Australian from Queenslander who killed 51 Muslims in a mosque, right? Yeah. We've got racial tensions, the rise of Islamophobia is skyrocketing in this country, and anti-Semitism. So it's like, you're looking at all these factors and you're going like, but it's like a team chant. But it's not like there's real world. Like she's now the most popular political figure in this country. Like we can't reduce it to football chants.
Yeah, but people want the football chants because you mentioned the rise of anti-Semitism. Okay, well then we have the Epstein files. Okay, Epstein was a Jewish man, so people automatically associate like evil Jewish elites to the Epstein files, child sacrifice, child pedophilia, all this stuff. Then you have the grooming gangs of UK, 250,000 people, whatever it is. So people are angry about that. And they when they see 97% of Pakistani Muslims, plus the rest of them, like raping women, they
90% of Pakistani.
They say 97% of those rapists were Muslim, right? That's according to this report. So when people hear this,
that's insane.
They want these chants because they're angry, right? And when you hear about like crimes in Paris, like there's lots of YouTube videos where you can see like what's happening in Paris. And you go, what the hell?
Look, first of all.
So people get mad about that.
The grooming gangs, all of the condemn them.
Yeah.
Right. And those people that committed those atrocities and those crimes should be held accountable, right?
Yeah.
And I was just shocked because like these reports that come out, like Rupert Lowe's report, for example, right? Yeah. The studies that he used to extrapolate the number 250,000 from, and to say that they were white girls and it was Pakistani men that were doing it. I've looked at those very same studies. Those studies unequivocally say there is difficulty in establishing the ethnicity of the perpetrators and the victims. They don't have that data in those studies. So he's extrapolated the data for 250,000 people from data that doesn't have ethnicities or religious group or whoever, and he said that that's all Pakistani men. So it's just like the number in itself is not true. It's not to say that there wasn't, because there was historical cases of this, right? Yeah, and that should be accountable for. But the majority of grooming gangs in the UK, statistically, is not Pakistani men, it's white men in the UK. That's the majority of grooming gangs. The majority of paedophiles in the UK are white people and white men. And they're overrepresented. They're overrepresented for their population size.
I don't know the true statistics on that.
So that was a royal commission that was done in the UK.
But I'm just saying,
I can send you you can send it and you can have it up on the screen.
I get that, and even if that's correct, the idea
it doesn't excuse, and it's another thing to excuse, because like, look, I'm saying this not in a sense of like I'm trying to protect. No. I'm saying this because the accusations are so big that like the whole Muslim community is tarred with this brush, right? Yeah. When like most of the Muslim community despise what's happened, and it's caused a lot of harm within the Muslim community, right? And it's caused a lot of division within the Muslim community, because there's Muslims in the UK that look at Pakistanis and blame them for this, even though the majority of Pakistanis weren't involved in this.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, of course.
So like even within the Muslim community,
that's a natural. That's what's going to happen, right?
Yeah,
like you
but,
saw what happened in Belfast.
I understand. People have these tribal instincts to think. The way that I try and look at all of this, right? Yeah, is like, look, we need to take that kind of rhetoric and blaming out all the rest of it, because I could turn around and say, well, these Christian countries that came to Iraq in an illegal war killed 1 million Muslims, right? Yeah. But I don't view it that way, right? I don't look at the person on the street and blame them for the policies of Tony Blair and George W. Bush.
You might, but others would, right?
No, others might do, right?
Yeah.
But it's the same with like when people look at like grooming gang scandal and blame Muslims for it, right? Yeah. It's not the right position to take. The right position isn't to label a whole group. The right position to take is there are certain individuals in each group that are pretty bad, and they need to be dealt with the full force of the law. We need to support.
I hear that, but the problem is, right, and this is this is for you. I'm telling you this for your own sake, right? Because this is what I have to talk to and deal with, right? The idea is not just. This is going to sound a bit insane, right? And your audience might not like this. It's not just that they're Muslim. It's also that the Pakistanis are known to intermarriage with their and we've seen genetically when you intermarriage a lot and you marry your cousins, IQs become lower. So it's like, and that's why the chants are so loud. That's why people are angry. That's why you see people in Belfast.
Look,
these, so it comes down to it's like a eugenics question as well.
But like these eugenic questions, we're going into very dangerous territory here.
I know, but this is where we have to talk about this. We have to talk about this one day.
Pakistani people in general, it's a nuclear-powered country. It's a country that is very technologically advanced. It is also a country where many Pakistani people here are doctors, engineers, and it's a very smart country.
No one's denying that. But I'm saying that most people don't see that. They see a majority of.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying like us entertaining those kind of ideas is not the reality of Pakistan. Pakistan has many problems in its country. Same with many other countries in that part of the world and in that region. They're still dealing with the effects of colonialism. They're still dealing with the effects of caste systems in India.
Yeah.
They're still dealing with the fallout and borders between Bangladesh and India and Sri Lanka. Like these places have so many different things. So for me to go into it, it's a bit of a minefield to go into. But the idea that we can talk about people from a sense of their IQ is low and they're barbaric and stuff like that, that dehumanizing language is very problematic.
It's problematic, but it's what's happening. So that's why we need to address it. And it's problematic, but it's true in the sense where people hold that as a way of being. And not just that, another thing is, right, and you see this, like I did a post video on the Adelaide Tale, went very well, it's on like 7 million views.
Yeah.
You have a Indian Muslim man in Canada saying, we're Islamic, we're going to come here and we're going to take your country, we're going to introduce Sharia law, and there's nothing you can do about it. So when you're a Commonwealth person or Anglo-Celtic person hearing that, it's almost a war. It's like the chant back. Yeah. So you might get upset that Pauline Hanson is saying that thing, but then you hear the same thing coming back. So it becomes a sport. Essentially.
No. See, there's a massive difference here. Right?
Yeah.
Some random guy in Canada with a camera pointed to his face saying the most extreme, vile stuff. Right,
but it's extreme though. No. If you did polling in the UK, would most Muslims not want Sharia law?
No. You see, this like again, it's a misconception here of what Sharia law is. Right? Yeah, like Sharia just means law.
Yeah.
So you're going law, right? Yeah. That's why it's so funny. Like we sometimes go the Sharia law. It's just Sharia, right? And Sharia it just means your religious law. So it means things like not stealing, not cheating. And do you know what's also part of Sharia law? What is a rule in Sharia law is to abide by the country's rules that you're living in. That's part of Sharia law.
Most people don't understand is okay. If that's true,
and also as well, what Sharia law do we have in this country?
Well, that if you look at the current legislation, there are talks about introducing like a two-tier system of law, of Sharia law.
Well, where is this? You're telling me, and I'm like in the Muslim community. Listen, because I know Sharia law is just like family disputes of like what to do and stuff.
Yeah, so people have an issue with that though. That's what I'm saying.
But why? Because if you were to get married, as an Orthodox Christian, right?
Yeah.
Right, and you were to have a religious ceremony, right? Yeah. That would be your Sharia law of how to do it. And the ceremony and
an Orthodox marriage wouldn't affect. Like I don't have my own set of laws. It's just like a ritual, right? So,
but that's what Sharia law is. It's like the set of ritual and rules and
people don't see that.
But if people don't see that, that's not a problem with the Sharia law. That's the problem with people's conceptions.
So, but is that something you fundamentally believe, or is it just something you've told? Is that a coping mechanism for yourself? As like, do you not?
Why is it a coping mechanism? Like that's what Sharia law is. It's not a coping mechanism.
Because the thing is, like, if you like, okay, this is the best way to say it. I'll try and simplify because our audience wants to hear it simply, right? Yeah. The idea is that Islam is a theology, right? You believe in Allah, you believe in Christ, sure, and you believe in all these things. But ultimately, what does Islam want? Islam wants, just like Christians, like, actually not the Jews. Yeah. Islam and Christianity both want everyone to be Islamic and Christianity at the end of the day, right? We all, like, if everyone wants us to come to Christ, I'm sure everyone wants, you'll find it Allah or whatever, right? So the idea is, if, like with Sharia law is seen as a vehicle to infiltrate Western Christian countries to introduce Islamic law into those countries to then take over. So it's like the whole idea of Islamic takeover. That's true. I'm not making moral judgment. That's not a moral judgment.
Can I answer the question right now? Yeah. So, like, first of all, that's conspiracy. Okay. Right? And second of all, like, Sharia law, right? Muslims have been living here in Australia for like how many, like over 100 years now. Yeah. Right. There's mosques. There's mosques that are a lot older than that.
Well, the oldest mosque is actually here in SA, I think.
Yeah, it's like 1880 or something like that, right? Yeah. Look at all the Muslim politicians that we have in office. Have any of them tried to introduce Sharia law? Have any of them tried to introduce anything that is Sharia? Sharia is just your ability and the law of your religion to practice your religion. And in this country, you can freely practice your religion as a Muslim without any problems, right? Yeah. So Sharia law is like when you have a problem with inheritance and family disputes and marriage and divorce, spousal problem, like that's what Sharia is. It's people coming to a religious leader and getting that kind of guidance and counseling from religious scholarly texts, right? Yeah, of how to do it. Jewish people do it. Christians do it.
Well, we're not anymore. We're getting destroyed.
But we're talking here about Sharia, right? Yeah. So I want to keep this about Sharia, right? Yeah. Yeah. So the idea that Sharia law is like what Sharia law is going to infiltrate and take over, because the law of the Sharia law itself states that you should abide by the rules in that country as long as those rules don't stop you from practicing your religion. And as I've already said, these countries here in the West are secular countries which allow freedom of religion. So that means me as a Muslim, I can practice my religion freely here without any problems. I can choose to not drink alcohol and not eat pork here. I can have halal food here. I can go to the mosque and pray. I can go out on the streets and tell people about Islam. Right? Yeah. Where is it that I'm not allowed to practice my religion here? And what would me having Sharia law here, what would it add benefit to here? Because if I want to feed the sick here, or if I want to feed the poor, I can. If I want to help the homeless people here, I can. If I want to run for office here and make a change in my community, I can. So what is it that I want with Sharia law? What is it in Sharia law that's going to infiltrate and take over the West? So where's this conspiracy coming from? And what is it that you think Muslims want to do?
It's not even a conspiracy, right? It's just
it is a conspiracy. I mean, that's what a conspiracy is.
Okay, because let's just say this, right? If I truly believe Christ is king and Christ is the way to the kingdom of heaven, right? I really believe that.
Right. Yeah.
Then I would want that for everyone in humanity. Okay. Right. As an Islamic person, if you really thought Allah was the way, the Quran is the word of God, you would naturally want that for all of humanity, right? But also there is a natural inclination for us to want everyone to be.
But in Islam, it says there's no compulsion in religion. Yeah. Right. And it also says that...
But that's not true in some countries. Like in Iran, if you practice Christianity, you get...
No, you don't. That's not true.
No, it's true. I've talked to...
Well, they have 70,000... No, listen.
Even if you bring a Bible out, you get in trouble for that, right?
No. Listen, man. We have to stop this kind of thing going on there. Because there's more tolerance in many parts of these Muslim countries than there are...
Not in Iran, though. Surely not.
I'm not talking about Iran right yet. But even in Iran...
Indonesia, for example.
In Iran, they still do have freedom of religion there. You can be, and I'm not saying that not oppressive. They're oppressive to everyone, and Muslims as well. But Iran's a bad example. Like, let's look at other countries like Turkey, for example. Yeah. Let's look at Palestine, for example, right? Yeah. You know, Palestine, Christians in Palestine, they give the keys to the Holy Sepulchre Church. That's the most holy church in the whole Christian kingdom. Do you know who looks after the keys to the church?
Muslim family,
the Muslims, right? So this idea of Muslims are not tolerant to other religions, it's just not true. Indonesia is a majority Muslim country, but yet they have temples and
they have Bali,
they have Hindu sections to it. And that's why in Malaysia It is a Christian, Hindu, Muslim country ruled by Muslims, and there's a lot of like integration within there. If Muslims wanted to have Sharia law in Australia or Canada or the UK, why would they not want to have Sharia law in countries, you know, where they govern over non-Muslims? Why would they not take away their rights to worship and thingy? Like this is what I mean. This is why it's conspiracy, because like I'm looking all over.
I think it's like a soft power thing though. That's the problem,
but
right?
the soft power doesn't come from bringing in Sharia law, because in religion there's no compulsion in religion, right? Yeah. There's no compulsion in the religion of Islam. You know, why would God want you to worship him by force? What good is that if it's not through free will?
Okay, so that's the question that I've got, right?
Yeah.
I agree with you. This is my issue though, because I do see like the three theologies, Judaism, right? Judaism is kind of an ethno religion. Like you have to be, your mother has to be Jewish. There's like, and if you want to become Jewish, it's a very tough process. Not you can just become Jewish. Like it's a tough process. Christianity, anyone can be Christian. Islamic, anyone can be Islamic, right? You don't have to like go. You have to do certain things. So there's always going to be a natural competition between these three theologies. It's like a sport. Like if you look at it as a sporting metaphor, Islam will naturally always want Islam to rule. Christians will always naturally want Christendom to rule. Right. A Christian country will always naturally want to be Christian. So an Islamic country will always want to be naturally Islamic. Like I'm sure Mecca will always want to be.
But Mecca is like the Vatican Church. Like,
exactly. But
right.
You would never.
It's the same. But it's the same thing. Like you don't build mosques in the Vatican.
Yeah, but
But you still have. Mosques,
historically, we've had that. Like you know, Aga Sophia, right? The church in Constantinople, which was our greatest church, is now a mosque. So it's like.
But that's not a religious issue. That's an issue between Greece and Turkey.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a religious thing, right? Yeah. And we need to stop like with the whole, well, this particular country, whether it's Iran or Afghanistan, that have this very extreme version of the way that they do things. That's not a representation of Islam. And this idea, like, you know, Muslims already rule majority, like there's Muslims that rule over Christians in the Middle East, all over the Middle East, right? Yeah. But Christians still build churches, still go to church freely, still practice their religion freely, right? Yeah. The idea that Muslims want to come over here to a secular country to make it Muslim, when they have Muslim countries that are open with other religious groups and other religious minorities, like to me there's like a contradiction here. Like surely it would be easier to make those countries more radical.
It's only because you have a few bad, like if you have Iran, right? Bad egg. Afghanistan, bad egg. When you see those bad, like it's like, have you heard the saying, you could build 100 bridges, but you suck one dick. You're not known as the bridge builder, you're known as the guy that sucked a dick, right?
Yeah,
have you heard
first time I've heard
that. Have you heard that saying before?
But yeah, okay.
It's a saying. So it's like, you could say Islam is peaceful and all this stuff, but then you have one guy that does something bad. Yeah. Then it fucks it all up. Same with Christianity, same with Judaism, right?
But it doesn't though, because like that guy in Thailand recently, right? Yeah. Who murdered that miner in Thailand, right? Yeah. Has his religion ever been mentioned once?
No.
Right. There's a difference between the way that we portray this.
Yeah.
But he's not the first Western white man, you know, that's gone over to Thailand and picked up a miner.
Yes, pedophilia is huge in Thailand.
It's rampant, right?
Yeah.
And many Australian men go there. Many white Australian men go to do that, right?
Agreed. Yeah.
We never talk about their religion, and we never say it's a religious thing. When we talk about the Catholic Church and the problems with historically, the problems with, you know, grooming and children in the Catholic Church, right? Yeah, we never say Christianity has this problem, right? Yeah.
Oh no, they do though. The communists do say that though.
But some people might. But from a point of view is like these are individuals that I mean. Christianity doesn't teach that. Christianity doesn't teach to harm children.
Well, I would say the issue we're having is
but Christianity doesn't teach to harm these kids.
No, of course not.
So these are these individuals that are doing it, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same with Islam. Islam doesn't teach you to harm these people. It doesn't teach you to go and blow innocent people up or anything like that, right? Yeah. That's obviously not within the faith or the scripture.
But most people don't understand that. But most people think that's not true.
So that's fine if most people don't think that. But the idea is we can have a conversation like this, and I can tell you that like obviously that's not true. You look at things like the IRA, right, in the UK. The IRA, when they had pipe bombs and they were blowing up cars and street corners and killing loads of people, did we say that was Christian terrorism? Or did we just call it Irish nationalism?
Yeah, Irish nationalism. Yeah.
Right, but it was Christians that were doing it, and it was Catholic Christians.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
And they were doing it to Protestant Christians, right?
Yeah.
But we wouldn't say
it's our own people, right? It's like it's same.
But we wouldn't call that, right? We don't say that that's Christianity, right? That's done that. Even though
No, they do though.
No. Even though, say, Christianity came over to here, we could say that England at the time was, a Christian country, God, land, all the rest of it, and killed a whole lot of Aboriginal people. I wouldn't say that that's the teachings of Christianity. I wouldn't say that the pilgrims, as they were known, that left Europe and went to America and killed loads of Native Americans, I wouldn't say that that was Christians doing that or Christian teachings doing that. I'd say that was really greedy people that were coming over and wanting to establish new land and killed the inhabitants. The idea, and the Holocaust, World War I, World War II, tens of millions of people killed. Like the idea that violence is exclusively Islamic, just historically, is not true. There's violence in all of these religions, right? Yeah. But if we're going to talk about who's committed the most amount of violence, historically, not my opinion, by any kind of scholars, is Christian nations or historically.
No, that's not true. It's actually communist nations. 70 million people killed by the Bolsheviks, killed 70 million Orthodox Christians. That's the greatest genocide ever. The Christians have been genocide more than any other religious group in the world.
What about how many millions and tens of millions were killed in the Native American population?
Most of those came down to disease. They weren't actually like active killings.
But who bought those diseases and who wrapped smallpox? Who wrapped smallpox in blankets and gave it to?
It's like an unfortunate situation. But you can't blame that on Christianity. That's just disease, right?
No. But they gave them blankets with smallpox in it, right? Yeah, to spread disease, right? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So the problem. This is what I'm saying, right? Yeah, is like, look, I don't blame Christianity for that, and I don't say it's Christianity for that. But the same way, what I'm saying to you is like, when there is a Muslim or someone who claims to be a Muslim and commits a terrorist act, right? Yeah, that's not Islam. So why are we giving the grace to, say, Christians or Jewish people or Hindu or whoever else, and when an act is committed of violence, we don't call that terrorism, or we don't say that's teachings of the religion, but we look at Islam and we go, oh, but that crazy person said it there, because there's plenty of people throughout history that have justified their religion for the killing of and the enslavement of people, by the way, because people use Christianity as teachings within Christianity to enslave black people. And actually the Mormon church, remember they said that black people were evil souls, that's why they were black.
Well, to be fair, the only reason slavery actually stopped was because of Christianity. The 1920s eugenics movement was stopped by the Catholic Christians that actually were against the human zoos at the time.
I understand that Christianity changed its position, right? But my position has never been that Christianity.
But that's not the true form of Christianity. That's just,
But you're arguing like that. But why won't you accept when I say that's not the true form of Islam?
It's not what I'm accepting. What I'm trying to get at is, this is a great metaphor, right?
No.
We both love football. Like we both watch the English Premier League, right? You got Arsenal and you got Tottenham, right?
Yeah.
So Arsenal is let's maybe use different takes. We'll fight about this. Let's say West Ham and Millwall, right? West Ham is Christianity, Millwall is Islam, right? Ultimately, what does West Ham and Millwall want as clubs? They want to be good clubs. They want to play good football. They want to win trophies, right? And they want as many fans as possible. But what do both of those clubs have? They have hooligans. And what do these hooligans do? They kill each other. They stab each other. They do bad things. Same with religion, right? At the end of the day, whose team wants to win? If I'm living in West Ham and I'm in a West Ham area, I want West Ham to do well. I don't want to see Millwall do well in my country. I want West Ham to win. If it's that concept, if you can conceptualize it into sports, it's the same thing. That's why when you hear Pauline Hanson saying, chanting, all Muslims are bad, whatever she chants.
But do you agree with that?
No, I don't fundamentally agree with that. Fundamentally, no. But I understand why it's being said, just like I would understand why an Arsenal fan would scream Tottenham is shit. Like it's.
But do you think all Muslims are bad?
No, of course not.
Okay.
No, of course not.
So do you think she's wrong for saying that?
I don't think it's not about wrong or right. It comes down to sport again.
Don't get it just.
No, it's not about wrong or right here. That's what I'm trying to say.
Just say it's wrong. You know what I mean? No, because it's wrong.
But it's not about being wrong or right. It's not.
She said Islam is a cancer. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't. But I don't think it's just like saying.
So you don't agree with what she said?
I don't think Chelsea Football Club is a cancer, but I don't want Chelsea winning the Premier League.
Okay, but there's a difference between Chelsea being a candidate and not wanting Chelsea to win the Premier League, right?
The boss is many bad things about Chelsea.
But also as well, like Chelsea is a football club.
Yeah.
Muslims are human beings.
Yes.
And we can reduce it. We can reduce it down.
It is reduced
no,
down.
hang on a sec. Hang on a sec. It's important, right? Yeah. Because we can reduce this down to football clubs, right? Yeah. And say that this is just.
I'm doing that with intention, by the way, to make it easier for the audience to understand.
I understand, but also as well,
it's a complicated issue.
I understand it's a complicated, but we can't simplify a complicated issue to football teams because what it does is it takes out the humanization of it, right? Yeah. It is dehumanizing for Pauline Hanson to say that there are no good Muslims. It's dehumanizing to call Islam and Muslims a cancer in society.
You could say the same. You could say that what's her name, Fatima, like laughing about Charlie Kirk arrested in piss, right? You could say the same thing. Like both sides are not like immune to saying bad things. Like that's a Muslim woman saying that.
There's a difference. There's a difference. Oh, look, right. Yeah, I'm not.
But the only reason she's saying that.
Look, I'm not endorsing anyone's comments about Charlie Kirk, right? Yeah. But there's a difference between one woman condemning one person and
but that one person.
And hang on a sec. And the leader of a party, she's an independent senator. You know, compared to someone who's polling at the top and a leader of a party, generalizing an entire religious group of quarter of the world's population and saying there are no good Muslims. There's a difference between, and you can't, and this is the problem, like you can't compare like this to this. They're not the same. And George, what I'm saying to you is like, look, I'm happy to have these conversations with you. I just want you to give me a fair go here. I want this to be an honest exchange, right? Yeah. And the way that it has to be an honest exchange, right? Yeah, is if I see a Muslim person doing something bad or saying all Christians are bad, I will say, hey man, that's out of order and that's wrong, right?
And that's why I like you so much, right?
But also at the same time, like...
But I'm the same. If I see a Christian man do something wrong, I will be the same, right?
So what I'm saying is
what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to justify her saying it. I'm not saying it's morally good. I'm just saying I understand objectively why she's doing it. That's all I'm saying. I understand why hooligan... I know you're saying it's not good to do that, to dehumanize it, but I need to for our audience to understand because this is what's happening.
And I want your audience to understand that, like,
it doesn't have to happen that way. But it's what's happening.
There's real consequences though to this because we talk about it like footballing terms and footballing teams, but it's not a football team. I live next door to you. I'm your neighbor, right? Yeah. We're not rivals. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like condensing it down to we're rival football teams doesn't really get to the crux of it because we have to live together. We have to go to school together. We have to eat together. You know, like.
But it's kind of like this, right? If all of a sudden West Ham made a new policy saying we need to bring a bunch of people from Millwall into our area and they're going to sit within our fan stage. The West Ham fans are not going to be happy about that. Do you understand? That's where it's coming from.
I understand, but like it's
like there's going to be a
you're simplifying.
We have to because remember most of the audience. This is a really complicated issue. If we don't simplify, they're never going to get it.
But also when we simplify it as well, right? Yeah, we risk losing the nuance of it.
Of course. But for now, because these conversations aren't happening, by the way, right? We're the first. We're probably the first to really have this type of conversation. So. If we can, I think the first step in us unifying is to simplify it and then get through the nuance. Because if we can't even get through the simple parts first, then the nuance will be completely missed.
Right. Okay.
So I agree with you. I think I look at you as an equal. Spiritually, I see your soul. I think you are equal to me. Genetically, we're not equal. You're much taller than me. You're much bigger than me. You probably could beat me up, right? Like there's so I can understand in a material sense that we're not equal, maybe physically, but spiritually we're equal, right?
Okay.
So I'm able to recognize that.
Right. Okay.
Most people don't recognize that. So we need to get to that level first.
Okay.
The issue for Australia is it's West Ham, and we want West Ham, right? When you see a bunch of Millwall people coming here, we get upset because it's happening very quickly, and it's not happening at a pace that we think is workable to remain as a club. Like we will lose the soul of West Ham, right? We will lose the soul of Australia. That's the issue. No one's saying get rid of all immigration. We're saying, hey government, stop propping up the economy with the GDP. Stop using mass immigration to keep retirements happy and the economy afloat. We don't mind tough times. Austerity sometimes is necessary. And then you have other economists saying, no, you can't do that. It's really bad. You don't know what it's like to live with austerity. Okay, no, our ancestors lived with austerity for a long time. Maybe sometimes it's okay to have some austerity. I'm not saying we get rid of Muslims. That's not my position, by the way. I've never said I don't want Muslims in this country. Never said that. But I don't want 90% Muslims in this country. All right, I didn't sign up for that. I signed up for 80% Christian, I'm happy. 60% Christian, I'm happy. And that's it. I didn't sign up for millions and millions and millions of Indians coming to this country. No one wants that as well. Just like we wouldn't want millions and millions of Millwall fans coming into West Ham. It's as simple as that, really.
But okay, look.
And I know it's dehumanising, but it's just the reality. Like,
imagine look, you know what?
Okay, one thing. This is important. 2 seconds.
Okay, go on.
The exact same with Palestine, right? I'm sure Palestinians didn't want tens of thousands of Israelis coming there and saying, "Oh, this is our land now," right?
Okay,
it's the same. It's the same thing that's happening.
But it's okay. That is a completely different thing because that's a hostile takeover, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very different to.
I get that, but I'm saying
very different
it's the feeling, the emotion of that.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand people's feelings towards this, right? Yeah. And this is why we're having a dialogue, right? Yeah. Because I want to bring down the temperature.
Yeah.
And it's also good that you've acknowledged that it is dehumanizing the way that sometimes we talk about this. And we talk about these people where you go, I don't want these kind of people here, right?
Yeah, of course.
It's good at least that you acknowledge there's a dehumanizing element to it, right? And look, that's very brave of you to do that, right? But
I mean, like, you see some of the stuff I said about Tottenham fans, mate. I've dehumanized people. Don't worry.
So and it's exactly because of that dehumanization.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we sometimes have a conversation where we're open, we're honest, we can talk about things from different perspectives, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we have this conversation, what I really want to do is I want to humanize these immigrants that are coming here through, because they're not coming here illegally.
Yeah.
Many of them aren't coming here with bad intentions.
Of course, I agree.
Many people are coming here just for a better life, like your family did, like my family did. We just come in here for a better life, and we're here to contribute. The idea of this, like, it needs to be a monoculture, right? Yeah. Well, what do they mean by a monoculture? Because you are an Orthodox Christian Greek. Right? Yeah. You are very, very different to somebody who, say, is here that is a Coptic Christian from Egypt, or somebody who's an Irish Catholic.
I wouldn't agree with that. See, in the Orthodox...
No, but hang on a sec, let me finish, right?
Yeah.
Someone who's Catholic, someone who's Orthodox, someone who's Coptic, right? Yeah. Culturally, from different parts of the world, speak different languages, right? Yeah. Have different foods.
Sure.
And then on top of that, when we come over here, the surfer that's on the North Beaches of Sydney or the Gold Coast is very different to somebody living in Mount Isa on a cattle farm, and their culture and the way of they live their life is very different. So this idea that there's a monoculture right here is just not true. There's never been a monoculture right here. We have different languages here, we have different foods, we have different religious ceremonies. Even within Christians here in this country, we have different religious sects within Christianity, right? Yeah, that also have different ways of practicing. For example, you celebrate Easter more than you would celebrate Christmas. It's a bigger holiday in the Orthodox Church than that. But you go to a Protestant Christian, Christmas is a bigger day to them. So the idea that then, culture is we have this monoculture, it's just not true.
Well, okay, on that is okay. That's not necessarily true. So, for example, South Australia's a great example. When South Australia was established in 1836, it was predominantly 95% Christian. And not just Christian, they were Christian Masons. So the predominant culture was a monoculture. It was a monoculture.
Right.
And for
but that monoculture was there because what happened to the indigenous people?
Yeah, of course, but it's irrelevant, right? I'm just talking
about... It is relevant. I mean, we've killed a whole load of people. That is relevant.
But
it was a monoculture that was established...
I'm just taking the morality out of it for a second and just looking at...
What if we take the morality out of it? What good's the argument? What good's the argument if you take the morality out of it? Because you're a moral man. You're a moral Christian man. So you can't take the morality out of all these dead Aboriginal people.
But things have happened, right?
Right, okay.
And
let's entertain this, right? Yeah.
Like even
take the morality out of it. Okay,
let's just take it, because even me, like, I'm married to an Aboriginal woman. I'm going to have Aboriginal kids, right? So, like, and I've walked 400. I have a deep love for Aboriginals, right? Yeah. Like, to the point where I'm actually going to create a little Aboriginal kids suit, right? Yeah. So it's not my issue is not Aboriginals.
Right. Okay.
Things happen in history, really dark things that are immoral, but they do happen. Right. And we can't just like the Mayans sacrificing 10,000 people. Like things have happened, but we can't be caught up on that forever. There has to be a point where we move forward, right? Okay. Christianity happened to Australia. Did a lot of Aboriginals die? Yes. But do a lot of Aboriginals embrace Christianity? Yes. If you talk to a lot of Aboriginals, they actually are proud that the English came here. Same with Africans. There's a lot of Africans.
That's a big step to take for saying all of Aboriginals are.
But no, there is factions within the Aboriginal community that are really happy that the British came here.
You could say maybe there's factions, but you can't say the majority of Aboriginals are happy that their
I'm not saying majority. I'm just saying
that they were genocided and killed, and to this day are still displaced.
If you look at ancient Aboriginal history, they had a 35% murder rate. They had a high rape rate. They were like at war. It wasn't like some peaceful. It was a terrible place to live.
Listen, that doesn't justify.
I'm not justifying, but I'm just saying, if we
wiping them out in Tasmania.
I'm not saying.
But that's what you're saying. You're saying, well, it was already violent. We were just more violent.
No, I don't know. No, but
being more violent.
No, but that's not necessarily true, because objectively, if you look at the time from that violence to now, it's obviously a lot more peaceful. Like, it's been a net benefit.
I mean, it's really like, it's insane.
Imagine
some of the stuff that you're saying is morally just
how?
like...
But how? If you had if you had a neighborhood in your neighborhood and it was a 35% murder rate, would you want to go there?
So look, this is what I'll say: if the choices were a 35% murder rate, right? Yeah, that meant that we've existed in this neighborhood for 60,000 years.
Yeah.
Or a murder rate that's still pretty high to this day.
Yeah,
right, in some
but not 35%.
Right, maybe not 35, but still pretty high.
And rapes and wars. And
right.
Yeah, yeah.
But you were going to kill 98% of my family, right? Yeah, I take my chances on the 35% than 98% of my family being killed.
And I would totally understand that point of view.
So it's not so it's not better. It's not a net better, right? Yeah. Otherwise, like, you know, we wouldn't have all of these rallies that Indigenous people have. So look. The point is like, we can't justify a monoculture, because what you're doing by trying to justify this monoculture is you're going back to a time where there was genocides going on and enslavement that allowed a monoculture to exist. And also what's important to remember is the world is a very different place in the 1850s, because the world now is so globalized and so connected. I can hop on a plane now, right, and I can be in England in the same day, right?
Yeah, I get that.
That's very different.
That's only 1% of the population flying. My point is, who created the idea of multiculturalism? It was the financiers and it was the bankers. Why? Because it was an economic exercise. Women voting was an economic decision. From powerful men decided that they wanted to tax half more of the population and have women outside of their home so they could make, you know, so all these decisions.
Do you think women voting is a bad thing, though?
Well, I don't think women inherently wanted to vote. Like, I think it was not...
They did. There was a whole suffragettes movement.
No, initially it was actually the men who voted for the women to vote. It was actually... There was only a small...
But do you think it's a net benefit that women are allowed to have the choices
honestly,
to vote?
I'm still grappling with the idea of... I only think a small portion of the population should be able to vote at this point. But I'm not married to the idea, but I'm at the point...
But you are kind of married to the idea.
No, I'm not married, because I got my mind changed. But because I'm living in a world, I'm experiencing a world, and I need to explore the ideas of the world. And I have to try the hat on. If it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, I'll take it off and try something else on. I'm not my ideas. My ideas are just things I can hold for a bit and then move forward with. I'm an evolving human, has evolving perspectives. Like, just because I once thought that Greeks were better than Turkish people my entire childhood doesn't mean I believe that now. Like, now I look at Turks as equals, and I love Turks, right? And I've moved on from the atrocities of the past, and now I can see a Turkish person and see him as a human. From any part of my life, I didn't see that, right? So I'm willing to evolve and move forward. Are you open to the idea that multiculturalism is not actually a benefit to humanity? It's only a benefit to capitalism?
No, so I actually look.
Do you think China have embraced multiculturalism? Do you think Iran has embraced, like, at the fullest extent, like these countries?
Okay, so look, I mean, you obviously don't know all about it, like Iranian thing. You know, with Iranians, for example, right? Yeah, they have one of the most diverse countries with regards to ethnicities. Within Iran right now, with regards to ethnicities, religions, and all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah, the government is very repressive, but even within that society, there's a very many different sects of different groups of people that live there, right? Yeah, and generally, Iranians, the average person gets along with the average other Iranian. There are Kurdish Iranians, Arabs, there are Persians, there are Pashtuns, there are all kinds of different.
But they're
Iranians.
not equal.
I'm not talking about whether I'm not talking about the government structure. I'm talking about the general day-to-day Iranians.
Sure.
Iranians are very, they see you first as a fellow Iranian, as a fellow Persian. Yeah. Then they see you as anything else before religion or anything like that. Iranian people are very proud people of where they're from. If we go to other places, right, yeah, whether it's Syria, whether it's Jordan, whether it's Palestine, these are places that have different ethnicities and different religions, right, yeah.
But they're monocultures, though. Iran is a monoculture. But it's literally in the name, Islamic Republic of Iran, right? It's a monoculture.
Look, I'm not here to talk about Iran, right, yeah.
Yeah.
And I always say, like, I've always said to you, even from the start of this, Iran is just a bad example, like, to base ideas off from, right, yeah. But, like, for example, right, yeah, like, you know, this idea that multiculturalism isn't working, well, actually, if you look at somewhere like, say, America, for example, right, yeah, and multiculturalism there, it's made them the economic powerhouse of the world. Yeah. It's made them the most advanced civilization in human history. And they've done that by bringing in the best and the brightest from all around the world and putting them together. And every study that has been done has shown that countries that embrace multiculturalism tend to do a lot better in the long run than those that are a monoculture. And those countries that are a monoculture and don't embrace multiculturalism and immigration and things like that, like Japan and Korea and even China are facing collapse within their own societies. In 2050, Japan is going to be a completely different country than it is now because they're having a societal collapse and they don't know what to do. So this idea that multiculturalism doesn't work. Multiculturalism works as long as you have enough resources for people, as long as you have enough opportunities for people. And this isn't not me saying I endorse mass immigration and open up the borders and let everybody, I'm not saying that right now, but I'm saying that the idea that multiculturalism doesn't work when we live in a country that was essentially built and got better and better because of multiculturalism. The White Australia policy only got us so far. Then we brought in.
It got us pretty good though.
Then it wasn't though. It wasn't good for. Who was it good for? Was it good for women? Was it good for Aboriginal people? Who was it good for, George?
I'm not saying.
And also, you benefit from multiculturalism because you've come into this country when they got rid of the White Australia policy and they brought you. Well, when you were brought in,
the only reason the White Australia policy was brought the Greeks in because we were Christian based and we were European.
But they didn't. But originally, when Greeks and Italians, they weren't seen as white.
I know.
They weren't seen as white, right? Yeah. Now, Greeks,
but they were considered more white than other races.
Right,
that's why they allowed us here, by the way.
But then eventually, the identity now of whiteness has now embraced Greek people and Italian people in this country, and now we see the others as not white, and this, that, and the other. I think it's very dangerous. I think it's very, very dangerous.
I get that, but you got to remember, to the Greeks, to the hardcore Greeks, the Greeks see themselves as the original whites, us Greeks.
But it doesn't matter how you see yourself. This is the reality of what society was treating.
I get that. But I guess
so. What I'm saying
my point is,
if we're gonna go based on society thinks that you're bad or you're wrong, even though Greeks, when they weren't breaking rules and laws and this, that.
Yeah, but we assimilated well into this country because of our Christian roots. Where other nations.
I don't buy into the fact that because I feel
most people, but that's the thing.
I feel like I'm a pretty well integrated person.
Yeah, you are.
And I'm a Muslim.
No, I agree, but I'm just saying. Majority of Australians like Greeks and Italians because we assimilate very well because of our Christian roots.
But also, do you not think though that these new immigrants that have come over here, most studies show that it takes the second to third generation before people are more assimilated?
Yeah, I agree. But my point is the idea of a.
So if that's the case, then there was.
We can't have a country that has millions. You can have multiple races and multiple countries in a country.
Yeah.
But there has to be a mono anchoring country identity.
So what
has to be a definition.
What is the culture then that you want in
For me, I want Australia to be a Christian Anglo-Celtic anchored country. Okay. Right? I want British Commonwealth law. I want the idea of Christianity being intrinsic in the ideas of the way we run and how, because I believe generally that is the most workable thing for Australia and has delivered the best results. Same with America. America is a constitutional republic. The Constitution was based on Masonic and Christian law, right? So even America, as an example, yes, there's many different cultures there, but they still are bounded by the Constitution, right, and the Bill of Rights.
Okay.
That's a monoculture. America is still a monoculture. They're bounded by their Bill of Rights, by their Constitution.
Well, so not really, because I don't believe in the fact that the right of democracy, freedom of religion, all of these principles, right? Yeah, of fairness, of everyone having a fair go, and also as well when these countries were founded, when they founded the Bill of Rights, the fathers in the founding fathers of the United
most
States,
of the Masons,
but most of them owned slaves.
Yeah.
Right. So would you say that they were acting within their Christian faith to own those slaves?
But that's historical relativity, right? Different times, different places.
Okay. Different times. You want to say, but they were justifying their religion to have those slaves at that time, right? Yeah. What I'm saying to you is
that's heresy, though, in the Orthodox Church.
But what I'm saying to you, but they weren't Orthodox Christians.
Yeah, no, but
you're using a different type of Christianity that they weren't.
But the thing is, right? If Christianity, at the root of Christianity is orthodoxy, everything else is heresy. So all these other dominant.
But now you're talking about that, like.
That's true, though. That's what it is.
Okay, so you're saying all these other religious.
Yeah, these are the heresies.
Okay. So this is what I'm saying. Like, for me, I just don't see the world the same way that you do. I don't view it as football matches.
Fine. Yeah.
But
I also don't. But I live in a dichotomy, right? So I think, like as I said before, spiritually, I see us as equal spirits, right? Divine entities of God. We are all God with a lowercase g. So I see you as my equal. I don't see you as like something that's lesser or worse or better than me, right?
Okay.
But I do acknowledge that we exist in the material plane. This universe is full of suffering, it's full of death, it is full of destruction, it's full of passions, it's full of lust, it's full of sin, it's full of horrible, horrible things, right?
How can you make it better then?
Well, you can't. You can't make it better.
I just don't have that worldview. I believe we can make it better.
You can make, the only thing you can do, honestly, and I don't mean this to offend, the only thing you can honestly do is be the best version of you, Dr. Mo. Right? That's literally the only thing you can do. Yeah, and that's me. Like, I know for a fact that I'm going to come in this world, and my podcast might make a 0.00001% difference to this world. There's nothing in my heart that says I'm going to make a 30% difference. Like, I'm not here to change the world. I don't think the world can be changed. I think this is a stepping stone spiritually for us.
Look,
I love the sentiment of it. Like,
I don't buy into that worldview. You know,
okay, that's fine. But I love you for that, by the way. See, the problem is, I'm not saying don't, but I'm not saying don't do this. By the way, I really adore you for doing this. I think it's beautiful that you have this moral view. But for my current viewpoint of this material universe, I don't see it as this beautiful haven. I think the true haven will be the kingdom of heaven at some point when we do go there.
So, you know, look, you know, like I said, I mean, there's a lot of things that we touched upon and moved away from. The idea of monoculture, right? It's never been inherently true. The only way that you can have a monoculture is by force.
But that's not true. Australia did have a monoculture for hundreds of years. We had masonry in South Australia, which was a huge part of.
But we had a monoculture.
Anglican churches.
Okay, but we had a monoculture in a world where people would take weeks to travel by boat.
Yeah.
We had a monoculture in a world where the world was not connected, and we had a monoculture that was built on the enslavement and the destruction of an entire group of people that weren't
We've
that
all
other
been
culture.
enslaved. We've all been enslaved at some point.
But that doesn't justify it happening, and that doesn't.
It's not a justification, but I'm saying you can't use that as a way of a vehicle of argument.
No, but I'm saying
it's a bad faith argument.
No, it's not a bad faith argument. If we're saying that is a monoculture, that we were a monoculture, right? Then we have to look at the reality of how it was a monoculture. The reality of it is you're looking at the prism of 1850 or 1770, and you're saying, well, we were a monoculture then. And what I'm saying to you is like, we can't use that prism to judge the world for 2026, because for us to have a monoculture like there was an entire group of people that were subjugated, enslaved and killed, and the world wasn't as connected as it is today. Unfortunately, Australia relies on its protection from foreign countries. It relies on oil and gas and resources to power its economy from foreign countries. It relies on materials and exchange of ideas from other countries, right? Yeah. We live in a globalized system, right? Yeah.
Yes,
so therefore, a monoculture almost inherently can't exist anymore. The idea. Hang on a second. Let me just finish. Even if you were to go to the Middle East and somewhere like Saudi Arabia, right? Yeah. Right. You go on a Saturday afternoon when the Premier League is on or La Liga is on, people are wearing their Barcelona shirts, their Real Madrid shirts, their Liverpool shirts, they're going to the shisha lounges and they're watching football and they're celebrating. Fine. But that isn't, that is not like Arabic culture per se, but it's because we live in a globalized world.
But still monoculture. Saudi Arabia, I can't go to Saudi Arabia and demand that Christianity becomes the next government force, and I can't.
But Muslims aren't demanding that this country become Muslim.
No. Well, okay, but that's the issue. Not many people believe that, right?
But
a lot of people don't believe that.
I know, but perception and reality are two different things. Many people, by the way, don't believe Muslims are doing that, right? Yeah. There are some people that do, but many people don't, right? Yeah.
But I would say it's only 30%. I would say 70% of the population do think that, right? And we have to discuss that.
Yeah, but to discuss it, right? Yeah. The point is like, look at this. If Muslims were trying to take over, why have they not formed powerful lobby groups that they put all their money into? Why have they not?
Qatar have powerful money lobby groups, right?
Qatar is not acting in the interest of Muslims; it's acting in the interest of Qatar.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
But
so that's not Muslims taking over. That's Qatar having Qatar influence, and Qatar influence is very different to Muslims or the Muslim Brotherhood or anything like that. The other thing as well is if Muslims were trying to take over, why aren't more Muslims running for candidacy for state elections?
They are in the UK. and they're fundamentally altering the UK culture forever. That's the issue. That's Tommy Robinson is becoming so famous for, right? Tommy Robinson is a.
I came from the UK, right?
And
I'm a Muslim from the UK.
Like they're taking down flags. Like you can't even fly. I've seen it. I've seen it. They literally take down the flags, and you can't even hold the English flag anymore.
That's just not true, right? Yeah. Look, if one person comes and takes down a flag, doesn't mean that that's what 6% of the population are doing.
If it happens once, that's that. I'm saying, but it just happening once is concerning.
Perception and reality are two different things, because sometimes in the UK, when the flags were going up back in summertime, they were sometimes putting up the flags outside of mosques or on mosque windows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a patriotic thing that they were doing it. It was an intimidation thing that
It's
they were
still an
doing.
English flag, though.
But and I understand that. If I go to mosques here in Australia, and I've been to many mosques here,
Yeah.
right, every time I walk in...
Have you been to the one here, by the way, quickly? It's beautiful. You should,
I did. I went today. When I look up, there's always the Australian flag and the Aboriginal flag are always up. Sometimes they have the Palestine flag up there.
Yeah.
You know, most Muslims are proud to be where they're from here in this country. Most Muslims feel that this is their home. Most Muslims don't want to change Australia or the Australian way of life. Why would we change something when we already have freedom here to practice our religion the way that we want to?
I agree.
So the idea that
I'm saying we have to have definitions. Right. So, for example, I think Australia has to have a morally like the monoculture means there has to be a moral definition of what it means to be Australian.
Okay,
because
so what is it? Tell me one of these moral objectives.
Well, as I said, an Anglo-Celtic Christian nation is my.
But that's not a set of values, though.
Well,
that's not a culture, though.
Oh, but it is a culture. It's our laws, like our entire laws of Parliament.
Can Hindus not live in that system?
No, you can. You can live in that system.
Right, and can we not have? Can say?
But I'm saying if you're a
that?
Hindu and you come to Australia, you respect the like. If I go live in Dubai,
which Indians or Hindus are coming here? And which Muslims are coming and not respecting the law of the land?
There are small minorities of people.
So there are small minorities.
Yeah, of course.
But we already agreed. We already agreed there are small minorities in every race and religion that do so.
But that's the issue. That's what's causing these issues, right?
But again, like we say, perception and reality are two different things. The reality is most Muslims, most Indians, most Sikhs, most LGBTQ people aren't doing things that are causing harm to society.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
So, and this is the other issue, right? And we need to talk about this as well. So, for a lot of people in the minorities, especially the NSN crew, the white nationalists, they believe that the idea of multiculturalism is a Zionist idea implemented into society to destroy Western white countries. Right. So when someone from NSN is listening to this and they're going, "Oh, why is Dr. Mo supporting a Zionist idea?" That's what they'll be thinking in their heads, right? But I'm just saying,
I'm not going to entertain
that's
Nazi talking points.
I know,
do you know what I mean?
But there are.
Like, it's just look. I mean, there are some things that we can talk about, and some things that you've said that a lot of people would find offensive.
Yeah, of course.
There are a lot of things that people would be
both ways, by the way. Like the idea of not having a monoculture is just another saying. Can we have a defined? Can we define Australia? Can we not define something?
But I don't.
Like I'm not saying if
most people that are coming here are not here coming to take away Australian culture. Right?
I know, but it's just like annoying. Like as an Australian, like why can countries like Israel, for example, have a defined country, have Israel first? They have foreign lobby groups. Yeah. Israel is very Israel first. They do a fantastic job. They do whatever they want. They get away with it, right? Then you got China. China's a monoculture. You're a communist. You have to follow the rules of the law of China. It is China. Then you have Japan. Yes, they all have problems, but they all have their monoculture. They have a definition of like in China. You mess around and find out, you get done. Okay. Russia, monoculture.
But do you want to live in those countries?
Well, I think China gets a lot of slack. I think China's actually a lot more advanced and actually like a livable place than most people would. I think there's a lot of propaganda against China, to be honest. I'm not saying I'm pro-China, but I'm saying I think there's a bit of an overblow about China.
But the thing is, though, is
I'm saying my point is
you as a Greek Orthodox Christian Greek, right?
Yeah. It's just
you wouldn't be allowed to go to China. You wouldn't, like I'm saying generally, like obviously if you had this generally you wouldn't be allowed to go to Japan. You wouldn't be allowed to go all of these monocultures, right? Right, you can go as a tourist, but you wouldn't be allowed to come en masse, to immigrate there and
that's
form,
fine.
right?
That's fine though.
But you've reaped the benefits of that privilege here in Australia. So
Well,
why
no,
are
because
you
the white Australian policy.
why are you then closing the door
No,
to
no,
other
because-
people to
no, but-
have this same aspirations
No,
that
no,
you
no,
have?
I'm not closing-
That just wants to
I'm
contribute
not
to
closing
society.
the door. As an Orthodox, when the white Australian policy was formed, right, in the 1960s, 70s, when they decided to bring Greeks and Italians in, because Greeks and Italians are majority Catholic and Orthodox, which are aligned with the Christian values of the time. That's why they brought us in, and even the Lebanese.
Yep.
Why do they bring Lebanese people here? Because Lebanese people it's a Christian nation in the Middle East, right?
Yep.
So my point is that we did fit the model that they wanted, right? The issue is when you have when the Greeks and Italians came here, we didn't have protests on the street every day and try and get our way in terms of government issues. We weren't complaining about the Turks, what they did to us. Like, this is what people are absorbing and getting upset about, right? And this is why I wanted to have this chat with you, because I want to help. I want to help the Palestinian people more than anything. I'm disgusted in what's happened to the Palestinian people. But there are the ways we have to do things. Like, we can respect that Australia has an identity and a nation. Doesn't mean you can't live here. Doesn't mean I can't live here. But when when my family came to Australia, we respected Australia and we respected the British. I went to an Anglo-Saxon school, Anglo-Celtic school. I didn't go in there and try and bring about my like force everyone to do like my Greek way of life. I went in there and I assimilated into the school. I became part of the schooling system, and I got a good education, and it brought me much benefit and wealth in life. The reason why Pauline Hanson is growing, and this is what the Greens and everyone needs to understand, and all the Hannah Ferguson of this world, it's because people feel like there are a lot of people coming here and not respecting the identity of Australia and want to change it. We don't want it changed. We want it to stay as it is. That's the fear. That's where.
Okay, I understand.
When you ask me why is
understand-
Pauline Hanson polling so high, that is why.
Yeah, but I understand people's fears of not wanting cultures to change. But America in the 1950s and the 1970s and the 1980s and the early 2000s is very different to what it is today in 2026.
Yeah, and people aren't happy.
No, but it's not about what people aren't happy or not. I'm saying the culture has changed. I'm not talking about economics. I'm not talking about all that. I'm just saying the culture has changed very much so. The idea that we have this static culture is just not true, right? Culture changes all the time. It changes as demographics change. It changes as the economical system changes.
Yeah.
It changes as rises and falls in populism of certain right-wing or left-wing movements. It changes as classic pop culture changes.
Yeah.
The culture is never static.
Yeah, it evolves.
And culture evolves.
Yeah.
So like the idea that Australian culture is this uniquely one thing right here, I just don't believe it. I just don't believe that that's the case. Australia has changed since I've been here very much in the last 10 years.
And people aren't happy about that.
I understand. Well, I'm not talking about. I understand people aren't happy about that, but I want to sound like people weren't happy about many things over the decades here in Australia.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I don't understand people's grievances. I do understand people's grievances,
Yeah,
and I have nothing but empathy for people who are distraught at what's going on in Australia, whether it's the living standards that they have, or whether it's their ability to buy a house and all of these
What's
things.
been taught at schools or whatever it is. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, the idea of what's being taught at schools and this, that, and the other. Like, some people have problems with that, some people don't. There's a lot of controversy, right, and there's a lot of tensions in communities, left and right of the political spectrum. I just think like it's very dangerous that we have this idea that that culture is static. Culture is not static, right? Culture is dynamic.
I agree with
Culture constantly changes.
That's why it needs the anchoring of that's what I'm saying.
So the anchoring of it,
Yeah.
right, can't come in the way of not giving people a fair go.
Okay, so this is what I think. This is where we could unify. I'm not saying culture isn't like needs to stay stuck, right? What I'm saying is there has to be a strong definition of what a country is and what it represents,
yeah.
and then and if you want to have immigration, it's fine.
Yeah.
But when the people come here, they at least have something to anchor towards.
Right.
If you have this barge way, like no, there's like no real definition. What is an Australian? No one knows what an Australian is. Then is that what this country is? Are we just going to become like this? Like it starts stepping into the places of moral non-realism. Like Australia doesn't really have a. Like, ABC just put out a piece, like, they don't even want to respect the Australian flag. Like, they can't even respect our history anymore. They can't even respect the Union Jack.
I don't
care if the Union Jack represents genocide for people. That's not the point. The point is it's a historical, it's our history,
But you said that you don't care because it's historical, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And we should
We
respect
have a
history,
yeah.
right? But why don't you respect the history of like indigenous people for
I
60,000
do.
years?
That's why I'm making more Aboriginals,
Right.
by the way.
Yeah. But
I do respect it, but
but no.
but I wouldn't want I wouldn't want Aboriginal law for this country. I wouldn't want a 35% homicide rate in Australia. I wouldn't I wouldn't want child sacrifice. I wouldn't want. Like, I wouldn't want. I can still respect it.
But look, the issue is that we're going to the extremes here, and we don't have to, because if you have conversations on the extremes, we can't have conversations in the middle. And I want to keep this conversation away from the extremes and center it more, because look, the idea of me coming here and speaking to you is that there are social tensions rising in this country.
Yeah, of course.
Whether it's with Muslims, Christians, Jewish people in this country. And this is why sometimes I struggle with people on the right talking about this. When we talk about these values that you said, of family, of community, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jews, they all have these values as well,
course,
right?
yes.
So
These are universal values.
These are universal values. So they're not specific to Anglo-Celtic, right?
Agreed.
Right.
I totally agree with that.
So what is it? Is it that you want a white Australia?
No, it's just I want it doesn't have to be white. It just needs to be a Christian nation that's built on the Anglo-Celtic laws and systems that established it.
So
that means.
But then you have a religious hierarchy.
Well, no, it just means like you.
And if it's a religious hierarchy,
Christianity doesn't say you can't be Hindu or Buddhist. It's just
so
that.
What is it that you want then in the law to change right now? What would you change right now in the laws?
Well.
What's the first law that you would change if you came into power? What would you implement?
If I had full power autonomy, the first thing I'd do is fix the water and the food supply here. I think this water and food supply is terrible.
Right.
Because I feel like the population here is suffering because of the. Like I think a huge issue with the health is one, our water is basically carcinogenic here, and our food supply is riddled with microplastics, pesticides, and.
Then what would you do after you fix the water and stuff?
Well, then I'd fix the education, so I'd make sure that all of our education systems are built around Christian values, for sure.
What Christian values is it that you want to implement?
The stuff that is taught in Christian values, like in stuff in the Bible, stuff in
which ones specifically?
Well, for me, if
I just want you to say it.
If I had choice, I would
just cut right to it.
If I had choice, Orthodox values would be ideal, like because it's the highest church. So because the other churches for me, a lot of them are like full of heresy. So the old school, as Christ taught the church, have that as our like establishment in the education system.
Right. So you want this to be a Christian national country?
It just has not nationality.
Based on Orthodox views.
It doesn't have to be it needs to just be
But it wasn't founded by Orthodox Christians. This country.
Well,
it's founded by Protestant
anything
Christians.
that's Christian is essentially still of the highest church.
But that's your opinion. There are other Christians. That
it doesn't really matter
that.
what the heretics say. It's.
But you're calling them heretics.
But they are heretics. They are heretics though. So it doesn't matter.
This is the problem where like it falls apart because you're talking about.
Well, it's just that's
no,
the
but it has fallen apart because what you've said is you said we want Anglo-Celtic Christian identity right there.
Yeah.
But Orthodox Christianity is not Anglo-Celtic.
Orthodox Christian is the.
By the way, Orthodox Christianity has never been part of the English or the Irish.
Well, no, that's not true. So we are the root of Christianity. So the branches that spread out they're considered the heresy of Christianity, right? And it's like a tree. So there is the root.
I understand.
It's still an expression.
I know the history of Christian, and I understand where all the divisions come in.
You were asking me what I would want perfectly. I'm not saying that.
But I'm saying that your definition of perfect is not Anglo-Celtic. Anglo-Celtic. You're saying, well, in order, if that was where it stems from, then Anglo-Celtics wouldn't be Protestant. They would just be Orthodox. But they see problems in Orthodox Christianity, and that's why they're the sects that they are.
Well,
so what I'm saying to you is like even your definition right is probably different
that's my
to
definition.
a Pauline Hanson's.
Oh no, but this just to be clear, that's what I would want. But if it wasn't me, if I wanted to be an Anglo-Celtic Christian, so that would remain the Anglican Church. So the Anglican Church is the Church of England. Was the Church of England of Australia when it was first founded. So I guess I should be saying if I was to reform my idea, it would be if I had rule of law, I would reframe the idea of Australia that its identity is the Anglo-Celtic version of Christianity, which is Anglican. So the Anglican Church essentially would be the Australian. So our education system, our laws, which is already kind of a fact until what happened with Cromwell in 1650. I would like that. And that doesn't mean no to Islam. It doesn't mean no to Buddhists. It doesn't mean no to people like you. You come into this country, you can practice your Islam, but at the end of the day, this is a Christian country and you respect that. That's as simple as that. It's like if I went to Saudi Arabia, if I go to Dubai, right? I've been to Dubai. when I went to Dubai, I loved it. It's a beautiful place. I respect Islam there. I go to the mosque there and I go, wow, this is incredible. Like I have a deep love. Even Mecca, like I spoke to the leader of Mecca, like the person who ran Mecca for 3 years. I have a deep love, respect for what Mecca's done. Like I want to go explore that, but I don't want to go there and introduce Christianity. That's not my. But I'm not a crusader.
I understand, but like we're
I
talking
like
about.
that Mecca has a cultural identity. I love that it's government, that it's king, that it's royalty.
I understand. I understand. That's what you love, right?
Yeah.
But like we also support the dictators in those countries and not allow people to freely be able to choose what they want in those countries because they're all monarchs, right?
Yeah, they're monarchs.
Which, by the way, is against the Islamic principle. The Islamic principle is that people shouldn't rule by birthright.
So what was on that? So just quickly, because I know it's getting late and you got a plane to catch, and this has been a deep chat. But what was Muhammad's point of view then on? So was he not a king? What was Muhammad then? Was Muhammad what was he? Was he?
Well, he wasn't a king. He was just the prophet.
But was he would people just do what he said, kind of thing? Like was he kind of like king, or how did it work for him?
Well, it's like what Jesus was. Jesus was a prophet. Moses was a prophet.
Okay.
They're leader.
So as a spiritual leader, but he wasn't king. Like he wasn't the king where did he control finance? Did he control armies?
Well, once there was an Islamic kingdom that was established, then he had governance and things like that.
Okay, so he was essentially king, though, in a sense.
No.
Well, he had armies, he had finance.
He's a prophet. Like we can't compare a prophet. Like we have to talk about the people that came after him.
Okay.
They weren't kings.
Okay.
Right? They weren't monarchs. They weren't infallible.
What were they called? Or what were they
referred to? They were called the Amir al-Mu'mineen, which means like someone that's entrusted with a sacred trust to look after people, right? Yeah, or to govern. So it never was by birthright. If it was by birthright, then the family of the prophet would have been the first ones that ruled after him, but it wasn't. It was other people that weren't related to the prophet.
Okay, that's interesting.
So like we don't have
and that's not happening in the Saudis and in Dubai. That's all led by birthright there now.
Yeah, but like they're all kings and monarchs, and it's the same with the British royal family.
Is that not haram then? I don't understand how do they get around those laws? Like how are they
because they're backed and supported by Western governments to stay in power.
Okay, so you're saying that culture has been infiltrated by the West, essentially. And that's
I don't think it's controversial to say that large parts of the Middle East and those that run the Middle East are put in power, by the thing. I mean, sometimes they call them presidents, like they do in Egypt.
Yeah.
Or they call them a king, like they are in Saudi Arabia, or they call them a president, like it was in Libya. It doesn't mean anything because they're all just absolute rulers that rule by, and their kids ruled then after them by, because it was like, President Bashar Assad, right? But he could have easily have just been the king of Syria. It doesn't really matter because they ruled the same way. Yeah. They ruled by birthright. His father was the one before him, then he gave it to his son. It's like Kim Jong-un. Yeah. And, it was his father before him and then it was him. I mean, it's essentially like a monarchy. It's by birthright, whether you want to call it a king or a president, so it doesn't really matter.
What's the structure of Iran then? Do they have that old style, like the Muhammad style, or do they also have
No, they're a different sect of Islam, they're a Shia sect of Islam, so their structure is not built around that. It's built around there's in Shia Islam, and this is we're going down a very different topic here, but in Shia Islam there's two different thoughts in Shia Muslims where spiritual leaders become political leaders, and there's another sect of it which is where religious leaders don't become political leaders. So the Shia Muslims in Iraq have a worldview that the mullahs are not political leaders, whereas in Iran they have this idea that the mullahs, the religious leaders, are also the political leaders.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between the two. That's just a different, that's another day, another story. But anyway.
Yeah, just to, before we conclude, just to kind of rehash on the One Nation thing. Look, for me in One Nation, my purpose is to fulfill a place where I want someone like you to feel safe. I don't want you to feel threatened by the idea of One Nation rising to power. And that's my promise to you, is that...
Well, will you speak to Pauline Hanson?
Yeah.
And this idea of there's no good Muslims and Islam is a cancer, these things are not okay to say.
Okay.
Right? And I think that what she does is she creates an environment now where the Overton window has shifted to the right, where people feel emboldened to say those things. And I don't think that that's okay in political discourse. I don't think demonizing an entire religious group or demonizing an entire group of people based on their faith is okay, whether that's Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Hindu, or anything else, right? Yeah.
Sure.
So I think she's wrong for that.
Okay.
And I think as someone who supports One Nation and you want to see One Nation do well,
Yeah.
and you want to see them break the two-party monopoly,
Yeah.
right?
I want to see a party that actually represents its people.
Which you know, listen,
that fixes economic systems.
Listen. I understand people's grievances, and I understand people want that.
Yeah.
But I don't think doing it by division and by blaming a minority in society is the way to do it.
Yeah.
You know that, and I know that.
The reality is our issues are economic. Let's focus on having people being able to afford groceries, to pay their bills, to buy homes, to live a fruitful, prosperous life in this country.
Right.
When you have that, then we won't have time to argue about all these other little extremist things. I think extremism is the symptom of bad government. I really believe that. But anyways, let's sign off.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to say to the Adelaide Set audience? Because, look, I feel like a lot of Adelaide Set people would really enjoy you. I think you're an inspirational figure. And when I watch your Hassan stream, I just thought you were an incredible man. And I really liked how you also were willing to kind of bite back at Hassan a few times. Because Hassan says a lot of stuff that, you know, he's a bit controversial, Hassan. But you kind of held him in place, which I really respected you doing that. Is there anything you want to say to the audience? And I just want you to know I do value this conversation.
Yeah.
And I hope you get to see a version of me that's not like, oh, I hate all Muslims or I hate all this. It's more just I want to define. I want a definition. That's basically.
Yeah. I mean, look. First of all, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we have this dialogue. I don't agree with everything that you say.
Of course.
And you don't have to agree with everything I say. But I think one thing that we have to have is we have to hold each other's humanity in high regard. And we have to hold each other's dignity in high regard, whether that's you, me, Muslims, Christians, whatever else it is. You know, we live in this country and political tensions are rising. I don't want to see another Bondi. I don't want to see another Christchurch. I want to see a country that's prosperous. And the idea of like monoculture, multiculture, all of these things, it doesn't matter if we can't respect each other's dignity. It doesn't matter if we live in a multiculture if we're not respecting each other's dignity, or a monoculture where no one respects their dignity. Respecting each other as human beings has to be the fundamental principle that we have moving forward. And I feel it's important that we continue having these conversations.
Yeah.
And I'll bring more people like me, Muslims, that you can talk to,
I'd
and
appreciate that.
you can have theological debates.
Even people on the left, and it's an invitation. Like I'm willing to talk to people on the left, and that means even like the Hannah Ferguson's out, like whatever. I'm not open to having those conversations. Even if we don't have to agree on anything. I just think it's still important that we talk.
100%.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So,
100%.
anyways, thank you so much,
man.
and I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
man.
And by the way, all the work you did in Palestine, I honestly, it's very brave, and
I appreciate
I think
it,
you're a
man.
courageous person. And
Thank you, man.
No, I
Appreciate
appreciate
you.
you.
Appreciate
God bless.
you. Thank you, man.